Echoes of the Infinite Cage. Title: Echoes of the Infinite Cage, Episode 1. The Abyssal Alchemist INT. Labyrinthine prison cell, Nijht, a dimly lit chamber, with walls of twisted stone and rusty metal bars. In the center of the room, a man in his late 40s sits on a crude stool, hunched over an ancient tome. The man is dressed in tattered robes, with a long white beard that reaches down to his waist. The alchemist, Arthur, looks up from the book as he mutters to himself, "A most curious concoction indeed. It seems I must once again test its properties." He stands up and approaches a makeshift laboratory in one corner of the room. ENT. Labyrinthine prison cell, laboratory. Nijht. Arthur picks up a small vial filled with a swirling green liquid and pours it into a large cauldron. He then adds various ingredients from shelves lined with jars of herbs, powders, and crystals. As he stirs the potion, the air crackles with energy. Suddenly, a loud crash comes from outside the cell. Arthur's eyes widen as the ground begins to shake violently. He quickly rushes to a nearby window, peering out into the darkness beyond. EXT. Labyrinthine prison, Nijht. A monstrous creature emerges from the shadows, its massive body covered in scales and spikes. Its eyes glow with an unnatural light as it lets out a deafening roar. Arthur watches in horror as it lumbers towards his cell. Labyrinthine prison cell, Nijht. Arthur grabs a nearby mace and braces himself against the wall. The creature slams into the metal bars, sending them crashing to the ground. Arthur swings the mace at the creature's face, but it seems to have no effect. The creature roars again, shaking the very foundations of the prison. Arthur stumbles back, clutching his chest as pain courses through him. He falls to his knees, gasping for breath. Arthur looks up at the creature, his eyes pleading, "Please. I don't want to fight." The creature tilts its head curiously, almost as if it understands Arthur's words. It steps back, allowing Arthur to stand. He stumbles forward, clutching the tome tightly in his hands. Arthur opens the book and begins to read aloud a complex incantation. The air around them grows colder, and a swirling vortex appears before him. The creature watches curiously as Arthur steps into the vortex, the book clutched firmly in his hands. The vortex swirls faster, pulling Arthur deeper and deeper. Just as he vanishes, it collapses, leaving nothing but a small pile of ash on the ground. EXT. Labyrinthine prison, Nijht. Arthur appears in another part of the prison, surrounded by darkness. He stumbles forward, the tome clutched tightly in his hands. He mutters to himself, "Another form, another chance, fade out." To be continued in Episode 2, The Newborn Dragon's Wrath. In this episode, we introduce our protagonist, Arthur, a reclusive alchemist trapped in an infinite labyrinth. We establish the setting and the conflict immediately with the arrival of a monstrous creature. The focus is on Arthur's struggle to evolve himself through potions and spells in order to find a way out. The once familiar walls of Arthur's prison cell feel alien now, twisted and distorted into strange shapes that twist and turn in ways they never had before. He touches a jagged stone, feeling the roughness against his skin, and winces at the familiar pain of immortality, the constant reminder of his endless existence. "Arthur?" A voice echoes through the labyrinthine corridors, its sound distant yet clear. "Are you there?" He follows the voice to a hidden chamber, where he finds himself face to face with two figures, enigmatic Lady Vex and gruff warrior Thorn. They seem familiar, but Arthur cannot place them. They are part of this labyrinthine world just as much as he is. Lady Vex steps forward, her eyes filled with compassion yet also a hint of sadness. "You've come far, Arthur," she says. "We are not alone here." Thorn approaches, his gruff demeanor softened by the hope in his voice. "I'm Thorn," he growls, extending a scarred hand towards Arthur. "We're trying to find a way out of this prison, and I think you might be able to help us." Arthur looks from one face to another, feeling the weight of their words sink into his soul. The labyrinth has been a lonely existence for him, but perhaps there are others who share his desire for freedom. He nods slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'll help you," he says. "But first, I need to understand what happened to me." He takes out the ancient tome and the swirling green veil from his pocket, showing them to Lady Vex and Thorn, with a hopeful expression on his face. The two exchange glances before Thorn speaks. "We should return to our camp," he says. "I believe there are others who can help you understand what's happened." As they make their way through the labyrinth, Arthur feels a strange sense of hope welling up inside him. Perhaps this was not all for nothing after all. Maybe there is a chance for freedom and understanding in this twisted world. The three travelers weave through twisting corridors and face numerous challenges, from treacherous traps to monstrous creatures intent on their destruction. Yet, they persevere, driven by the promise of answers and escape. As they near their destination, a massive structure looms before them, the heart of the labyrinth. The air is thick with magic, and Arthur feels a shiver run down his spine as he gazes upon its imposing entrance. But he does not hesitate. Instead, he takes a deep breath and steps forward, ready to face whatever lies beyond. Echoes of the infinite cage the air is thick with anticipation as Arthur, Lady Vex, and Thorn continue their descent through the labyrinthine passages. A faint, eerie glow illuminates the twisting tunnels. The trio's footsteps echo ominously off of the cavern walls. Arthur clutches the tome tightly as he strides forward, his eyes scanning the pages for any clue that might lead them closer to their goal. "I can feel the labyrinth changing," he murmurs, a hint of fear in his voice. "Something is awakening." Lady Vex, ever calm and composed, replies, "We must press on. The key to our escape lies within these walls." Thorn nods in agreement as he swings his mace, the sound echoing through the tunnels. The group moves steadily forward, their progress slow but purposeful. As they round a bend, a sudden, deafening roar fills the air. A monstrous creature looms before them, its grotesque form a nightmarish fusion of human and beast. Its eyes glow with an unholy light as it advances on them, snarls reverberating through the chamber. Arthur transforms into a massive, armored behemoth, his newfound strength roaring to life within him. "Follow me," he barks, charging at the creature. The others follow suit, evolving into various forms as they prepare for battle. The fight is fierce and brutal, each blow sending shockwaves throughout the chamber. Lady Vex unleashes a torrent of arcane energy, reducing the beast's health with every strike. Thorn hacks away at its limbs with his mace, while Arthur uses his newfound strength to pin the creature against the cavern wall. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the monster collapses to the ground, defeated. The air in the chamber seems to sigh in relief as the trio catch their breath. "We must continue," Lady Vex says as she gazes at the fallen creature. This is far from over. The group presses onward into the depths of the labyrinth, each step taking them further from their past and closer to an uncertain future. As they journey deeper, they will face new challenges, uncover hidden truths, and discover that their fates are intertwined in ways they could never have imagined. Arthur, Lady Vex, and Thorn stood at the entrance of a vast cavern illuminated by an ethereal glow emanating from stalactites embedded with luminescent crystals. The air was thick with an ominous energy, as if the very ground beneath them shook with anticipation. "We must be careful," warned Thorn, his eyes scanning their surroundings warily. "This labyrinth has a way of testing us at every turn." "Indeed," Lady Vex agreed, her gaze fixed on the seemingly endless passageways that branched out from the cavern entrance. "But we have come far and grown stronger together. We shall face whatever awaits us." Arthur nodded, his massive form tensed as he shifted back to his human appearance. He had been growing accustomed to this strange prison, evolving into various monstrous forms to protect his companions. The transformation process was grueling, leaving him weakened for days afterward, but it was the only way they could survive. "Let us move," Arthur said, stepping forward and taking point as they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine passageway. As they traveled through the winding tunnels, Lady Vex consulted an ancient tome she'd found earlier in their journey. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and runes, each one more baffling than the last. She knew the key to escaping this place lay within its pages, but deciphering its secrets would not be easy. Thorn trailed behind them, keeping a sharp eye out for any potential threats, while also scanning the walls for hidden passages or traps. His years of battle experience had served him well in the labyrinth, allowing him to remain vigilant even when his fellow travelers grew weary. The group's journey was not without its challenges. They encountered several dangerous creatures, each more formidable than the last. Arthur would transform once more, growing larger and stronger with each evolution, until he'd no longer contain himself. The transformation left him weakened, but it was a small price to pay for their survival. One such encounter saw them facing off against a massive spider-like creature with glowing eyes. Thorn attacked first, striking the beast with his mace as Lady Vex unleashed a blast of arcane energy that knocked it back. Arthur lunged forward, pinning the creature against the wall with a mighty roar. As they continued through the labyrinth, Lady Vex's understanding of its mysteries grew stronger. She began to notice patterns in the symbols and runes that adorned the walls, hinting at hidden pathways and powerful artifacts. One such symbol caught her eye, a swirling green vortex surrounded by strange markings. "I believe this may be our key," she said, pointing to the symbol on the wall. The vortex seems to represent an entrance to another part of the labyrinth. Arthur and Thorn exchanged glances, both sensing the importance of the discovery. They knew that venturing deeper into the labyrinth would bring new dangers, but they also understood that their chance at freedom lay within its depths. "Let us find this vortex," Arthur declared, a determined look in his eyes. "We shall face whatever challenges await us and emerge stronger for it." As they pressed onward, the labyrinth seemed to grow more treacherous with each passing moment. They encountered twisted corridors that led nowhere, traps designed to ensnare the unwary, and creatures unlike any they had faced before. But they persevered, driven by the hope of freedom and the bonds they'd forged along the way. Their journey took them through dark caverns filled with glittering crystals, past ancient ruins that whispered tales of long-forgotten civilizations, and across treacherous ledges that demanded their utmost concentration to traverse. All the while, Lady Vex worked tirelessly to unravel the labyrinth's secrets, deciphering its symbols and runes as they went. Finally, after days of travel, they found themselves standing before the vortex symbol Lady Vex had spotted earlier. It pulsed with an eerie energy, drawing them in like moths to a flame. As they approached, they felt the air grow colder, the ground trembling beneath their feet. "This is it," Thorn said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Our chance at freedom." Arthur nodded, his heart racing with anticipation and fear. He knew that whatever lay beyond this vortex would test them to their limits, but he also understood that they had come too far to turn back now. Together, they stepped into the swirling green vortex, bracing themselves for the unknown challenges that awaited them on the other side. As they disappeared from sight, they knew that their fates were about to be forever altered. The labyrinth's response was immediate and devastating. A massive earthquake shook the ground beneath them, causing the vortex to grow larger and more turbulent. Arthur transformed once more, his body expanding to colossal proportions as he braced himself for the impact. As they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with towering columns and intricate frescoes depicting scenes of ancient battles between powerful beings. The air was thick with an energy unlike anything they had ever felt before. They knew that they stood at the heart of this labyrinth, where its true master lay waiting for them. But they also understood that they were not alone. There were others here, trapped like themselves and seeking a way out. And together, they would face whatever challenges awaited them, united in their pursuit of freedom. Their journey through the labyrinth had only just begun. but Arthur, Lady Vex, and Thorn knew that they had found something truly extraordinary: hope. Hope for a future beyond these walls, hope for redemption, and hope for the chance to break free from the never-ending cycle of pain and torment. And as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's heart, they would learn that their true power lay not in their abilities or their strength, but in their unwavering determination to survive and overcome the impossible. For they were no longer mere prisoners, they were warriors, fighters who refused to let fear define them. They were the last vestiges of hope, locked within the infinite cage that sought to break their spirits, but they would not be broken. They would rise against the darkness, and they would emerge victorious. Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur's body twisted and contorted in a frenzy of muscle and bone, shifting rapidly to adapt to the latest threat. A monstrous creature had ambushed them as they traversed one of the labyrinthine passages. Its scales glinted with an eerie luminescence, casting sinister shadows on the walls around them. Thorn, standing guard, swung his mace at the beast, the impact echoing off the stone walls like a war drum. Lady Vex's eyes flashed with fury as she wove intricate patterns in the air, her voice raised in a strange, ancient language that seemed to resonate through the very bones of the labyrinth. The creature roared, shaking the earth beneath them, and Arthur felt a deep dread settle into his heart. The weight of their situation bore down on him like a crushing wave, threatening to drown him in despair. But he could not afford to lose hope. His fellow prisoners depended on him. He could feel it in every bone, every sinew. He was meant for something more than this eternal imprisonment. With a final surge of will, Arthur's body erupted into a massive, serpentine form, its scales reflecting the dim light that filtered through the passages. He lunged forward, wrapping himself around the creature's neck and squeezing with brutal force, until it let out a dying cry before collapsing to the ground. Breathing heavily, Arthur returned to his human form as Thorn and Lady Vex approached him, their faces etched with relief. "We must keep moving," Lady Vex said, her voice tinged with urgency. "The labyrinth never rests." As they continued on, the walls seemed to close in around them, the labyrinth's darkness whispering secrets only Arthur could hear. He struggled to ignore it, but each word felt like a needle prick, slowly chipping away at his resolve. Finally, they arrived at a cavernous chamber, its walls covered in strange symbols and runes that seemed to glow with an inner light. In the center of the room stood a massive pedestal, upon which rested an ancient tome bound in leather and gold. Lady Vex stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the book as she reached out a trembling hand to touch it. "This is the key," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "The key to unlocking our prison." Arthur felt a spark ignite within him, a fire that burned away his fear and doubt. He looked around at Thorn and the others who had gathered behind them, their faces set with determination. Together, they would find a way out of this place. The labyrinth may have been their prison, but it could not break their spirit. They were more than mere prisoners. They were the last vestige of hope in this endless maze, and they would not go gently into the darkness. With renewed vigor, they set off once again, delving deeper into the heart of the labyrinth, seeking answers and redemption in its darkest corners. Each step brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to the edge of their own sanity. The labyrinth was a living beast that fed on fear and despair. It would not give up its secrets easily. But Arthur knew that they had no choice. They had to fight, to survive, and above all else, to escape. For the sake of those who had been lost, and for the promise of a brighter future, they would persevere. As they ventured further into the labyrinth's depths, the darkness seemed to close in around them, its whispers growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. But Arthur refused to listen, focusing instead on the path ahead and the knowledge that he was not alone. Together, they would find a way out of this nightmare. In the dim light of a cavernous chamber, Lady Vex's silhouette flickered as she held aloft an ancient tome bound in leather and gold, its pages glowing faintly with an eerie luminescence. "We have found something that may hold the key to our freedom," she declared to her fellow prisoners gathered around her. Thorn stood tall, his grizzled face etched with determination. "I'll do what it takes to protect us all." He glanced at Arthur, who lay curled up near the entrance, his form shimmering as he shifted subtly, testing new limits of his transformative abilities. Arthur looked up, meeting Thorn's gaze. "We must be cautious," he warned. "I am still learning to control my evolutions." A cold wind rustled through the chamber, causing the frescoes on the walls to sway, their images twisting and shifting like living beings. Lady Vex frowned, her eyes narrowing as she studied the tome. This book speaks of an alchemist who was trapped in a labyrinth for centuries, evolving into a multitude of forms to find the key that would unlock his prison. She paused dramatically. Could this be our alchemist? The room filled with hushed whispers, the air heavy with anticipation. Some glanced at Arthur nervously as he continued to shift subtly, unable to fully suppress his transformations. Thorn stepped forward, brandishing his mace. "We will follow this lead," he declared firmly. "I'll protect you both." He looked directly at Arthur, his gaze unwavering. "No matter what form you take." Arthur nodded, feeling a strange warmth spread through him at Thorn's words. Together they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, their path illuminated only by Lady Vex's glowing tome and the cold glow from Arthur's ever-changing form. As they progressed, the challenges grew more treacherous, twisting passages that led them through freezing cold chambers and suffocating heat, flooded caverns filled with dangerous creatures lurking in the shadows. Despite their exhaustion and fear, they continued to press onward, spurred by the hope of freedom and redemption. In a vast cavern, they encountered a monstrous creature unlike any they had faced before. Its twisted form seemed to defy logic and reason, its eyes burning with an unholy light. Arthur felt his transformation begin as he prepared to face this new threat. "Stay back," Thorn roared, stepping between the creature and Lady Vex. "I'll hold it off." He swung his mace at the beast, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. Arthur transformed into a massive bird of prey, its talons tearing into the creature's flesh with brutal efficiency. Together they fought, their combined efforts slowly wearing down the monstrous being until it collapsed, defeated. Exhausted and battered, they finally reached a labyrinthine passageway that led to another part of the prison. Arthur shifted back to his human form as Lady Vex closed the ancient tome, its glow fading away. "This way," she said softly, leading them deeper into the unknown. As they journeyed onward, Arthur felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that their road would not be easy and that many trials lay ahead, but he was determined to see it through to the end. No matter what form he took or what challenges they faced, he would not let them give up hope. Echoes of the infinite cage, the group pushed through labyrinthine passages, each step echoing off the stone walls like a mournful symphony. Their lanterns flickered weakly, casting long, dancing shadows across their weary faces. Arthur's eyes glimmered with renewed determination as he glanced over at Thorn and Lady Vex, who stood stoically at his side. "We must press on," Arthur said, his voice heavy with the weight of their journey. "The tome is our key to freedom," Thorn grunted in agreement, clutching his mace tightly as he scanned their surroundings. Lady Vex, her eyes closed, seemed lost in thought, a mysterious smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I sense that's something," she murmured, opening her eyes to gaze intently into the darkness ahead, "a presence unlike any we've encountered." The air grew colder, and an eerie silence fell upon them as they approached a vast cavern. The ground beneath their feet was slick with moisture, and a thick fog swirled around them like a living thing. "Careful," Thorn warned, his grip tightening on the mace as he scanned the shadows for danger. As they ventured into the cavern, the ground shook violently, sending rocks cascading down from above. A monstrous creature emerged, towering over them with multiple sets of eyes and sinewy limbs that ended in razor-sharp talons. It bellowed a deafening roar, causing their lanterns to flicker wildly. Arthur felt his heart race as he transformed into a grotesque, armored creature, its scales shimmering in the dim light. He stood tall and fierce, ready to face this new threat. Thorn braced himself, his eyes never leaving the monster as it advanced towards them with an unstoppable momentum. Lady Vex raised a hand, and a small vial filled with a swirling green appeared in her palm. She took a deep breath before throwing the vial at the creature, shattering it upon impact. The monster let out a cry of pain as the substance burned its flesh, causing it to writhe in agony. Arthur roared, charging forward and engaging the beast in combat. Thorn fought alongside him, their combined strength and skill matching that of the creatures. Lady Vex, meanwhile, searched for another means to defeat the monster, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as she mumbled incantations under her breath. The battle was long and grueling, but eventually the beast's thrashing slowed, its once imposing form collapsing to the ground in a heap of twisted limbs and broken scales. The air grew still once more, and the group stood panting, their hearts pounding in their chests. "We did it," Thorn panted, clutching his mace tightly as he surveyed their victory. "But we're not out of the labyrinth yet." Lady Vex approached the fallen creature, her eyes narrowing as she examined its remains. This was no ordinary beast. It was created with dark magic meant to keep us trapped forever. Arthur nodded grimly, feeling the weight of their situation settle heavily upon him. "We must continue. We're getting closer to that ancient tome. Together, we can find a way out of this place." As the group traveled through the labyrinthine passageway, the air grew thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to weigh heavily on their weary spirits. They had journeyed deeper than they ever thought possible, and each step felt like a testament to their perseverance. The once familiar walls seemed to close in on them, twisting and contorting into unfamiliar shapes. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the passageway, extinguishing their lanterns, plunging the group into darkness. Arthur transformed into a creature of shadow and smoke, his form shimmering with an eerie glow that illuminated the inky blackness around them. "We've entered a new part of this accursed prison," Lady Vex whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I've never seen these twists before." Thorn grunted, gripping his mace tightly as he scanned the darkness for any sign of danger. "Stay close. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." The group continued onward, their footsteps echoing off the walls, the sound amplified by the darkness. Arthur could sense something lurking in the shadows, its malevolent energy radiating through his being. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end as he prepared to defend his companions. Suddenly, a monstrous creature sprang from the darkness, its form twisted and grotesque, with multiple eyes, tentacles, and razor-sharp teeth. The beast roared, causing the very walls to tremble. Arthur reacted instinctively, morphing into a massive dragon, breathing fire at the abomination. The creature recoiled from the blasts, but it did not falter. It lashed out with its tentacles, snaring Thorn and pulling him away from the group. Lady Vex screamed in terror as her comrade was dragged toward the beast's gaping maw. Arthur roared with rage, transforming into a titanic being of stone and steel, his form shimmering with an unnatural strength. He charged at the creature, his fists striking it with the force of 1,000 hammers, sending waves of destruction rippling through the labyrinth. Thorn struggled against the beast's grip, using every ounce of strength to free himself. His eyes met Lady Vex's as he fought, and in that moment, they shared a silent understanding. They would not let the creature claim another soul. As Arthur and the monstrous creature clashed, Thorn managed to wrench free from its grasp, landing a powerful strike with his mace that sent shockwaves through the beast. It howled in pain, stumbling back, allowing Arthur the opportunity to deliver the final blow. With a mighty roar, Arthur struck down the creature, its body disintegrating into dust and smoke. The darkness receded, revealing a vast cavern filled with ancient tomes bound in leather and gold. Lady Vex approached one such tome, her eyes wide with wonder. This could be it," she whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation. "The key to our freedom." Arthur transformed back into his human form, a sense of hope burning within him like a flame. "Then we must read every word, learn everything it holds. We're one step closer to escaping this cursed prison," Thorn nodded, his face grim. We've faced unimaginable horrors, but we've come too far to give up now. Together, we will find a way out. Echoes of the infinite cage. The air grew colder. The flickering lanterns casting eerie shadows across the ancient texts sprawled out before them. Arthur, Lady Vex, and Thorn huddled together, reading the tome's cryptic words aloud. It spoke of a hidden passage that could lead them closer to their freedom, but also warned of dangerous obstacles they must overcome. "This is the way we were meant to find," whispered Lady Vex, her eyes glimmering with determination. "But it will not be easy." Thorn nodded, gripping his mace tightly. "We've faced worse before, and we will again." Arthur looked up from the tome, a new transformation beginning to take shape within him. "I feel it. Something is changing," he warned. Lady Vex watched him intently. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." As they continued their journey through the labyrinthine passageways, strange occurrences began to unfold around them. Hissing echoes reverberated off the stone walls, and the air grew thick with an uneasy energy. Suddenly, a monstrous creature lunged from the shadows, snarling at them. "We must act quickly," Lady Vex called out. "Arthur, transform." The change came swiftly, Arthur's body twisting and contorting as he took on a new form, a powerful beast with scaled skin, sharp claws, and wings that spread wide. Thorn fought alongside him, his mace glinting in the dim light, while Lady Vex cast spells to distract the creature. The battle was fierce, the air filled with roars and grunts, as the three of them struggled against their adversary. The creature seemed almost invincible, but they pressed on, refusing to give up hope. With a final burst of strength, Arthur struck the creature's weak spot, sending it sprawling back into the darkness from which it came. As the dust settled, they caught their breaths, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," Arthur panted, shifting back to his human form. "One step closer," Lady Vex said, her voice filled with determination. "The labyrinth will not break us." They continued onward, the shadows growing darker and more treacherous as they delved deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. The tome's warnings grew more ominous, hinting at greater dangers ahead, but they pressed on, united in their resolve to find a way out. Arthur, a reclusive immortal alchemist trapped within the labyrinth for centuries. Arthur can evolve into various monstrous forms to adapt and survive. His body is scarred and worn from countless battles with the creatures of the labyrinth, and his mind haunted by memories of past lives. He yearns for escape but struggles to find a way out while protecting those who travel with him. Lady Vex, a mysterious and powerful woman who leads the group of trapped souls, Lady Vex possesses knowledge that could help them escape. She is enigmatic and often secretive, guarding her past and motivations closely. Despite this, she exudes a quiet strength and determination that inspires those around her to follow her. Thorn, a gruff and stoic warrior with a strong sense of duty, Thorn is willing to risk everything to help his fellow prisoners escape. He carries the weight of their survival on his shoulders, but his unwavering resolve never falters. Though he may appear cold at times, his actions speak louder than words as he protects those who travel with him and searches for a way out of the labyrinth. The air grew damp and musty as the group ventured deeper into the vast cavern. Ancient tomes, bound in leather and gold, lined the walls, casting eerie shadows on the stone floor. The light from their lanterns flickered, illuminating a path before them. "What do you make of all this?" Thorn asked, glancing at Lady Vex as they navigated the passageway. "It's been centuries since I've seen anything like it." Lady Vex's gaze was distant, her eyes scanning the rows upon rows of books. "I suspect these tomes hold knowledge that could help us find a way out of here," she replied softly. "But we must be careful in what we read, for some secrets should remain hidden." Arthur, who had been examining a small vial filled with a swirling green liquid, frowned as he looked up at her words. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. Lady Vex's expression grew grave. "There are those within the labyrinth who would use such knowledge for their own gain," she explained. "We must be wary of those forces." As they delved deeper into the cavern, their conversation was interrupted by a sudden, deafening roar that echoed through the chamber. The ground trembled beneath their feet as a monstrous creature appeared before them. Its form was unlike any they had encountered thus far, its massive body twisted and contorted in ways that defied logic. Arthur's eyes narrowed, his hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of his mace. "We must be cautious," he warned, transforming into a fearsome beast to confront the creature head-on. Thorn drew his weapon as well, ready to defend himself and his comrades against this new threat. The battle was fierce, as they struggled to overcome the monstrous creature's seemingly endless supply of limbs and attacks. Its body seemed to regenerate with every blow they struck, forcing them to adapt their strategies on the fly. But in the end, their determination and unity won out, and the creature fell before them, its twisted form crumbling into dust. Exhausted but victorious, they caught their breaths as they surveyed the destruction around them. "We need to move quickly," Thorn said, his voice heavy with concern. "I don't know what else might be lurking in these depths." Lady Vex nodded in agreement. "Let's find another passage and continue our search for a way out," she said, her eyes scanning the cavern walls for any clues. Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur's transformation began in earnest, as he continued to evolve into different monstrous forms, adapting to the ever-changing threats of the labyrinth. His companions marveled at his resilience and growing strength, though they remained wary of the consequences of his evolutions. One evening, as the group rested within a large cavern, Arthur felt the familiar twinge of change coursing through him once more. This time was different. He could feel it deep in his bones. As he shifted, his body morphed into a massive, hulking beast with thick scales and powerful limbs. His eyes glowed an eerie green, illuminating their surroundings. Lady Vex approached him cautiously, her eyes filled with concern. "Arthur," she whispered, "what have you become?" He looked at her, his new form towering over her, and smiled weakly. "I do not know yet, but I will learn to control it." Thorn watched the exchange from afar, his mace gripped tightly in his hands. He knew that their situation was precarious. They had encountered many dangers thus far, and Arthur's evolutions only added to their uncertainties. But he also understood the necessity of their mission, escape or die trying. As the trio continued their journey, they found themselves in a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was thick with an ancient energy that seemed to hum beneath their feet. In the center of the cavern stood a massive statue, its face obscured by shadows. Lady Vex stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room carefully. "I have seen this place before," she murmured. "It is one of the hidden chambers within the labyrinth." Arthur and Thorn exchanged glances. They knew that each new discovery brought them closer to their goal, but also increased the dangers they faced. As they approached the statue, they heard a sudden rustling from behind them. Turning, they saw a monstrous creature emerge from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with malice. The group prepared for battle, their hearts racing as they fought to stay focused amid the chaos of combat. Arthur's new form proved powerful against the beast, but it was relentless in its attacks. The fight dragged on, each blow landing heavily upon the cavern floor. Finally, exhausted and battered, the creature retreated back into the shadows. Arthur collapsed to his knees, gasping for air as Thorn rushed to his side. Lady Vex approached them, her eyes filled with concern. "We must rest," she said softly, "and regroup." The trio sat in silence, their hearts heavy with the weight of their struggles. Arthur looked at his companions, feeling a sudden surge of gratitude for their unwavering support and determination. Though the labyrinth had taken much from him, it had also given him friends he never thought possible. Together, they would find a way out. As they prepared to move on, Lady Vex approached Arthur once more. "Your power is growing," she said quietly, "but be careful. There are forces at work here that we do not yet understand." Arthur nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He knew that his evolutions were changing him in ways he could not fully comprehend, but as long as he had his companions by his side, he felt a sense of hope. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead and find a way out of the labyrinth. The labyrinthine passageway twisted and turned like an endless maze, the dim glow of lanterns flickering weakly in the damp air. Arthur's monstrous form towered over his companions as they navigated through the winding passages, each step bringing them closer to their unknown destination. The walls bore strange symbols etched into the stone, and a distant echo reverberated off the cavernous chamber walls. A sudden growl interrupted their silence, followed by a low thump against the passage wall. The group froze as a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its form impossible to discern until it lunged forward with a snarl. "Monstrous creature," Thorn bellowed, readying his mace. "Brace yourselves." The beast was unlike anything they had encountered before. A grotesque amalgamation of various creatures from the labyrinth. Its limbs were long and spindly, its body covered in thick fur and sharp spines. Its eyes glowed a sinister green, as it leaped towards them with an unnatural agility. Arthur roared, transforming into a form more monstrous than ever before. His scales turned dark as midnight, his limbs grew larger, and his claws sharpened to razor-like edges. The others stared in awe at the sight of their evolving companion, a strange mixture of fear and admiration in their eyes. "I'll take it," Arthur bellowed, charging towards the creature with a fierce determination that took even him by surprise. The battle was brutal, both parties clashing violently as they exchanged blows. The beast's spines slashed through Arthur's scales, drawing blood but not slowing his relentless advance. Thorn and Lady Vex fought alongside him, trying to land hits on the creature while fending off its attacks. Finally, the creature roared in frustration as it retreated into the darkness from whence it came. The group caught their breaths, covered in sweat and dirt from the battle. Arthur's new form trembled from the effort, but his eyes shone with a renewed determination. That was different, Thorn panted, looking at Arthur's monstrous visage. "You keep evolving, Arthur. What's happening to you?" Arthur grunted in response, his voice still strained from the fight. Lady Vex stepped forward, a concerned expression on her face. "We don't know," she said softly. "But we need to be cautious. The labyrinth is changing us all, and it's unknown what consequences our evolutions may bring." Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur's latest evolution left him standing tall, his body covered in thick scales and powerful limbs that seemed to defy gravity. He roared, shaking the very foundations of the labyrinth as he tested his new form. Thorn and Lady Vex exchanged worried glances, their faces etched with concern for their friend. "We must keep moving," Thorn said, gripping his mace tighter. "The labyrinth is filled with dangers we cannot foresee." Lady Vex nodded, her eyes scanning the dark passageways ahead. They had ventured into a part of the prison neither she nor Thorn had ever encountered before. It was vast and unfamiliar, lined with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air grew colder as they walked, the darkness pressing in on them like a living thing. As they navigated through the labyrinthine passages, the group heard a faint rustling in the distance. Their hearts quickened, and Thorn drew his mace, readying himself for battle. Suddenly, a monstrous creature lumbered into view, unlike anything they had faced before. It was massive, with multiple heads, each snarling and bearing razor-sharp teeth. Arthur roared again, his new form ready to face the threat. The beast lunged at them, its many heads snapping and snapping as it closed the gap between them. Thorn charged, swinging his mace with brutal force, while Lady Vex cast a spell that sent bolts of energy crackling towards the creature. Arthur stood firm, his body rippling with power as he wielded his newfound strength against the beast. The battle raged on, each blow landing with thunderous force. The air was filled with the sounds of metal clashing and flesh rending, the stench of blood and fear hanging heavy in the air. Despite their best efforts, the creature seemed almost unfazed by their attacks, its many heads relentless in their assault. In the midst of the chaos, Arthur felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. His senses heightened, and he realized that this creature was unlike anything they had faced before. It was as if it was a manifestation of his own darker thoughts and fears, a physical embodiment of the guilt and pain that haunted him. He fought harder than ever, determined to overcome this manifestation and find a way to break free from the labyrinth's grasp. The battle raged on, neither side giving an inch. As they struggled against the beast, Arthur felt a spark of hope ignite within him. He knew that if they could defeat this creature, they would be one step closer to finding a way out of their prison. With renewed determination, he summoned every ounce of strength he had and launched a final, devastating attack. The beast roared in agony as Arthur's powerful limbs shattered its many heads. It writhed and convulsed, its body crumbling to dust as it fell to the ground. The air grew still, the only sound the distant echo of their breathing and the slow beating of their hearts. Thorn and Lady Vex stood over the remains of the creature, looking at Arthur with a mixture of relief and fear in their eyes. "We must press on," Thorn said, his voice heavy with emotion. "The labyrinth will not be defeated easily." Arthur's transformation had taken a toll on his body and mind. Each evolution was more grueling than the last. He stumbled through the dimly lit passageways of the labyrinth, clutching the ancient tome tightly in his hand. His heart raced with anticipation and fear as he sensed another presence lurking ahead. A faint glow emanated from a cavernous chamber up ahead, casting eerie shadows on the walls of the narrow passageway. Thorn led the way, his mace gripped tightly in his hands, while Lady Vex trailed behind him, her eyes scanning every corner for danger. The group entered the vast cavern, finding themselves surrounded by towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. A large, pulsating glow emanated from a pedestal at the center of the chamber. Intrigued, Arthur approached cautiously, his senses alert for any signs of danger. The glow grew brighter as he neared, revealing an ancient tome bound in leather and gold resting upon the pedestal. As Arthur reached out to touch it, a sudden roar echoed through the chamber. A monstrous creature emerged from a hidden passageway, its body composed entirely of swirling, molten lava. Thorn and Lady Vex drew their weapons, preparing for battle as the creature lunged towards them with unnatural speed. The lava beast's movements were fluid and graceful despite its monstrous form, weaving around Thorn's strikes with ease, while dodging Lady Vex's attacks with a seeming intelligence that baffled Arthur. He watched in horror as the creature targeted his companions, leaving him helpless to intervene. Thorn struggled against the beast's unyielding grip, his mace clattering to the floor as it continued to tighten its hold on him. Lady Vex fought valiantly, her spells weaving intricate patterns of magic that seemed to have no effect on the lava beast. Arthur, desperate to save his companions, focused all his energy into an evolution. He felt a familiar surge of power coursing through his veins as he transformed into a massive creature composed entirely of swirling water. With a powerful roar, he charged towards the lava beast, their elements clashing in a spectacular display of raw power. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, each side testing the other's limits. Arthur found himself struggling to contain his own form as it threatened to overwhelm him, while the lava beast proved relentless in its pursuit of Thorn and Lady Vex. As they fought, they exchanged chances, their determination unbroken despite the seemingly insurmountable odds. With a final, desperate burst of strength, Arthur managed to knock the lava beast back, causing it to stumble and lose its grip on Thorn. The warrior stumbled free, gasping for breath as he looked at Arthur with gratitude and fear in his eyes. Lady Vex stood over the fallen beast, her face a mask of determination as she held out her hand to help him up. Echoes of the infinite cage, the remnants of their group, limped through the dimly lit passageways of the labyrinth, fatigue etched onto every line of their faces. The battle against the lava beast had taken a heavy toll on them, and as they regrouped, Lady Vex consulted an ancient tome. "We must be cautious," she warned. This creature was unlike any we've faced before. Her eyes flickered over the text, her fingers tracing runes etched onto the leather-bound pages. "It seems it was summoned by an artifact within this chamber." Thorn grunted, his mace resting on his shoulder, as he scanned their surroundings. "We need to be ready for more surprises like that beast." He glanced over at Arthur, who seemed unusually subdued. "Arthur?" The water-based being stared into the distance, his thoughts a whirlpool of emotions and questions. I'm not sure what I am anymore," he murmured. "Each transformation, it changes me." He shook his head, a wave rippling through him as he returned to his human form. Lady Vex closed the ancient tome, her expression softening. "You are still Arthur, but you have been granted immense power. We must learn to control it and harness it for our advantage." She extended a hand towards him. "We are in this together." Thorn watched the exchange, a glint of respect in his eyes. He hesitated before offering a nod. "We'll help each other," he said gruffly. "That's all we can do." The flickering lanterns cast eerie shadows on the worn stone walls of the labyrinthine passageway as Arthur Thorn and Lady Vex crept forward cautiously. The battle with the lava beast had left them shaken but resolved to confront whatever lay ahead. "Something doesn't sit right," Arthur murmured, his eyes scanning the intricate symbols etched in the stone walls around them. "These markings, they seem familiar." Lady Vex peered at the ancient script with a frown. "I believe these are echoes of an arcane language, lost to most. The symbols represent various aspects of our prison, its guardians, traps, and perhaps even the key to unlocking it." Thorn grunted, tightening his grip on his mace. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together," he growled, his voice heavy with determination. "We are not alone in here, and we won't let these walls break us." A sudden rumble echoed through the passages, causing them to pause. As they listened intently, a distant roar grew louder, sending chills down their spines. "That sound, it's not natural," Arthur whispered, his eyes widening in fear. "What could be making that noise?" Lady Vex frowned, flipping open the ancient tome she carried. She scanned the pages, her fingers tracing over the faded text. "It appears we may have stumbled upon a hidden chamber filled with a creature unlike any we've faced before." Thorn's face hardened, his eyes narrowing as he gripped his mace tighter. "Then we prepare ourselves for battle," he growled, leading the way deeper into the labyrinth. As they ventured further into the dimly lit passages, the roar grew louder and clearer. Arthur could feel a growing sense of unease, as the fear of the unknown gnawed at him. The air seemed to thicken around them, weighing heavily on his shoulders. He glanced back at Thorn and Lady Vex, their faces resolute despite the impending danger. "We'll face whatever lies ahead together," Arthur whispered, a hint of resolve in his voice. "Whatever this creature is, we must defeat it." The roar grew louder still as they approached the entrance to the hidden chamber. The massive doors were adorned with symbols similar to those they had encountered throughout the labyrinth. As Thorn pushed open the heavy stone slabs, a wave of heat and stench washed over them. Inside, they found themselves in a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. At the center of the chamber stood a monstrous creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. Its body was a twisted mass of metal, limbs ending in sharp, jagged blades, and eyes burning with an unholy light. "By the gods, what is that abomination?" Thorn gasped, his grip on his mace tightening as he stepped forward to face the beast. Lady Vex studied the creature carefully, her eyes narrowing as she took in its form. "It appears this monstrosity was created from a combination of alchemy and dark magic," she murmured, flipping through the ancient tome. "We must, quickly, if we are to defeat it." As the creature raised its head, its eyes locked onto them, Arthur could feel a wave of power emanating from it. He felt his own powers stirring within him, the energy coursing through his veins as he prepared for battle. "We'll take it down together," Arthur growled, charging forward with Thorn and Lady Vex at his side. They fought fiercely, their weapons striking sparks off the creature's metallic form as they dodged its relentless attacks. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, but eventually, the creature collapsed, its twisted body crashing to the ground with a thunderous roar. Exhausted and battered, Arthur Thorn and Lady Vex stood over the defeated beast, their chests heaving as they caught their breath. "We did it," Thorn growled, his voice heavy with relief. "But we must not rest for long, there is still much to explore." Lady Vex nodded, her eyes scanning the chamber one last time. "Indeed. We may have found a clue as to the key to unlocking this prison," she murmured, reaching into her bag and producing an ancient tome bound in leather and gold. "It appears this tome is connected to the labyrinth's creation and may hold the secret we seek." Echoes of the infinite cage, the party approached a dimly lit passageway, torches flickering ominously on the walls. As they walked, the air grew colder and thick with an oppressive silence that weighed heavily on their spirits. Ahead, strange symbols etched into the stone walls seemed to dance in the torchlight, shifting and twisting as if alive. Arthur's eyes narrowed as he studied them. "The language here is unlike any I have encountered before," he murmured. Lady Vex nodded grimly. "We must find a way to decipher it," Thorn grunted, brandishing his mace. And fend off whatever else lurks in these passages." Suddenly, they heard a low growl echoing through the cavernous chamber ahead. A monstrous creature with multiple eyes and limbs sprung from the shadows, its body writhing like liquid metal. The party quickly prepared for battle, drawing their weapons and bracing themselves for the fight against this new threat. As they engaged in combat, Arthur found himself transforming into a serpentine form, his scales shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The creature's eyes widened, seemingly taken aback by the unexpected change. But it was not deterred and pressed the attack, snapping at them with its many limbs. Thorn roared, striking the creature with powerful swings of his mace. Lady Vex cast spells to confuse and disorient the beast, while Arthur continued to shape-shift, adapting to the creature's attacks and countering with deadly precision. The battle raged on, each side testing their limits in a desperate struggle for survival. Finally, as the creature stumbled back, Thorn delivered the final blow, its many eyes dimming one by one before it collapsed lifeless. Exhausted but victorious, they caught their breath, leaning against the cold stone walls. "Another battle won," Thorn grunted, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we've only scratched the surface of this place." Arthur nodded, glancing at the ancient tome resting on a pedestal nearby. "And the knowledge within could help us understand our prison and find a way out." Lady Vex studied the symbols etched into the walls, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If only I knew how to read this language," she whispered. The group walked along dimly lit passageways, lanterns flickering at their sides, casting eerie shadows on the towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was thick with tension as they approached a vast cavern filled with towering columns and more of those symbols. "We have never seen this place before," Thorn said gruffly, glancing around cautiously. "This could be a sign that we are getting closer to our prison's heart. Or it could be another trap," Lady Vex warned, her eyes scanning the cavern walls. Arthur held up the ancient tome he had taken from their last battle, studying the pages. "We must trust in this book. It has guided us thus far, and it will continue to do so." As they ventured deeper into the vast cavern, a sudden rumble echoed through the stone walls. A monstrous creature emerged from one of the passageways, its multiple eyes glowing with an eerie light and limbs stretching out in all directions. It towered over them, seeming to grow larger by the second. "What is that thing?" Thorn asked, his grip tightening on his mace. Lady Vex studied the creature for a moment before nodding slowly. "An evolution of our labyrinth's defenses. I have never seen anything like this before." Arthur, feeling the weight of their situation, took a deep breath and closed his eyes, concentrating on the swirling green liquid within the small vial. "I will try to find a way to defeat it. But we must be prepared for anything." The battle that ensued was fierce and grueling, but with their combined efforts, they managed to slay the monstrous creature. As it fell, Arthur could feel a strange energy coursing through him, like nothing he had ever experienced before. "We did it," Thorn said, relief evident in his voice. "But what does this mean?" Lady Vex picked up the fallen creature's remains, studying them carefully. This is not an ordinary evolution. I believe we have stumbled upon something extraordinary. Echoes of the infinite cage, the air grew stale and oppressive as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. The dimly lit passageways were lined with ancient tomes, some bound in leather and gold, others filled with the swirling green liquid contained within small vials. I sense something, Arthur murmured, eyes scanning the walls for the strange symbols that might lead them to their destination. Lady Vex nodded, her eyes sharp as she swept the passageway with her gaze. We must be careful, Arthur. I fear these monstrous creatures are becoming more formidable. Thorn grunted, clutching his mace tightly in his large, calloused hands. The sooner we find a way out of this place, the better. It's not safe for any of us to remain here. They continued onward, their footsteps echoing through the passageway. Suddenly, a monstrous creature appeared before them, one unlike anything they had faced before. Its multiple eyes and limbs seemed to move independently, its skin rippling with an unsettling energy. Quick, to the left, Thorn shouted, swinging his mace with surprising agility. The creature's limbs whipped through the air, smashing into the stone walls and sending shards of rock flying in all directions. Arthur transformed, elongating his limbs to keep up with the creature as it darted around them. His eyes glowed brightly, feeling a strange resonance within him that seemed to amplify his powers. With a roar, he lunged forward, slamming into the creature and sending it tumbling back. Lady Vex stepped forward, her hands glowing with an icy energy as she channeled her power against the beast. The air around them crackled with energy, and the monster let out a deafening howl before collapsing onto the ground. We must rest, Arthur panted, leaning heavily against the wall as his powers began to fade. I fear that creature was a harbinger of what awaits us in this labyrinth. Thorn nodded grimly. We can't let our guard down for even a moment. The stakes are too high. Lady Vex sighed, her eyes scanning the walls once more. We must find that chamber soon, or we may not survive much longer. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the labyrinth's bowels. Arthur could feel an odd energy pulsating from the walls, an almost sentient force guiding, or perhaps goading them forward. The dimly lit passageways twisted and turned, sending chills down their spines. We're getting closer, whispered Vex, her voice barely audible above the echoing silence. I can feel it. Thorn grunted in agreement, his eyes scanning the shadows. His mace glowed softly in the darkness, a beacon guiding their way through the labyrinth's depths. Arthur clutched the ancient tome tighter, its pages filled with cryptic runes that seemed to dance before his eyes. They entered a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. A faint light emanated from above, illuminating the area only slightly. The air was thick with an oppressive energy that weighed heavily on their senses. What do you make of this? Thorn asked, glancing at Vex. She frowned, her eyes scanning the symbols before focusing on a particular set. This looks familiar. She traced her fingers along the runes, mumbling under her breath. The strange language seemed to resonate with her, pulsing like a heartbeat within the stone. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the cavern. Arthur felt a shock ripple through his body as a monstrous creature emerged from one of the passageways. It bore multiple eyes and limbs, twisting and writhing in a grotesque display. Its flesh seemed to shift and change before their very eyes, growing more menacing with each passing second. What is that thing? Arthur asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Vex's face hardened as she studied the creature. I don't know, but we need to fight it. Thorn raised his mace, ready to attack. The creature lunged forward, its limbs writhing and twisting like serpents. Arthur felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him as he took on his latest monstrous form, claws extending from his hands and scales covering his body. The battle was fierce, the creature's shifting forms making it difficult to predict its movements. Arthur struggled to keep up, feeling the weight of centuries bearing down upon him. But Thorn fought with unmatched determination, and Vex's knowledge seemed to give them an edge against their foe. Finally, after what felt like hours, they managed to defeat the creature. Its body dissolved into a cloud of black mist that seeped into the stone walls. The cavern grew silent once more. "That was close," Vex panted, leaning against a column. "We need to rest." Echoes of the infinite cage in the dimly lit passageway. The group cautiously advanced, the echoes of their footsteps and heavy breathing filling the air. The lanterns flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls adorned with strange runes. Arthur glanced nervously at Vex, who seemed more confident than before. "What do these symbols mean?" inquired Thorn, pointing to one of the etchings on the wall. Vex studied the rune intently. "I believe they are directions," she replied, a hint of excitement in her voice. "Perhaps we're getting closer to our goal." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the passageway, followed by an unsettling silence. Arthur tensed, his instincts on high alert. He felt a presence lurking nearby, something malevolent and powerful. "We're not alone," he whispered, gripping his mace tightly. The ground began to tremble beneath them, and a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a creature unlike any they had faced before. Multiple eyes stared at them from its twisted form, while numerous limbs ended in sharp claws. The creature let out an ear-piercing screech, causing the group to recoil. "Stand back," Vex commanded, stepping forward. "I will handle this." Vex raised her hands, and a small vial filled with a swirling green liquid appeared in her grasp. She muttered incantations, and the potion seemed to bubble and boil in her hands before she flung it at the creature. The potion struck the monster, causing it to convulse violently. The battle was fierce, the group fighting for their lives as the creature continued its assault. Arthur swung his mace with all his might, while Thorn fought alongside him, using every ounce of strength he had. They could feel the creature's power. It seemed unstoppable and relentless. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the creature lay defeated on the ground, its multiple eyes staring blankly up at them. The group stood panting, their muscles aching from exertion. Vex knelt beside the creature, studying it closely. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen," she murmured. "We must be getting close to the source of this labyrinth." In the dimly lit passageway, Arthur and his allies felt weary from their recent battle against a monstrous creature. As they ventured further into the labyrinth, the air grew colder and strange echoes filled the silence. The group cautiously moved forward, lanterns casting flickering light upon the stone walls adorned with strange runes. Vex studied them intently, murmuring under her breath as Thorn kept watch, ever vigilant for any signs of danger. Arthur struggled to keep his thoughts focused on their mission, knowing that they couldn't afford to let their guard down. The labyrinth seemed determined to break their will and leave them trapped within its endless depths. "We should rest," Vex suddenly said, her voice echoing throughout the passageway. "I sense another powerful creature ahead. We need to regain our strength before we face it." Thorn nodded in agreement, his gaze never leaving their surroundings. Arthur glanced at him, his thoughts swirling with unease and determination. He knew that they could not afford to falter now. As much as he wanted rest, he understood the stakes at hand. If they failed to escape the labyrinth, they would be doomed to wander its endless halls for eternity. Vex led them deeper into the labyrinth, guiding them through a series of dimly lit passageways and cavernous chambers. The air grew colder as they ventured further, and strange echoes seemed to follow their every step. Finally, they arrived at a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. As Vex began to trace the runes once more, Arthur noticed something unusual about the creature that had emerged during their previous encounter. Its eyes flickered with an eerie green light, and its limbs seemed to stretch impossibly long. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with a monster unlike any they had faced before. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the cavern as another monstrous creature emerged from the shadows. Its body was a twisted mass of limbs and eyes, each one glowing with an eerie green light. Thorn moved to attack, his mace raised high, but Arthur hesitated. He knew that they couldn't afford to underestimate this creature. As the battle raged on, Arthur felt himself transforming, his body growing larger and stronger as he struggled against the monstrous creature's attacks. He could sense Vex and Thorn fighting alongside him, their determination driving them forward in the face of impossible odds. But no matter how hard they fought, the creature seemed relentless, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. In the end, it was Arthur who landed the final blow, his body reverting back to its human form as the creature crumpled to the ground. The group stood panting, their bodies aching from the battle. As they caught their breath, Vex studied the fallen creature, her eyes narrowing as she traced the strange symbols etched into its flesh. "This creature is unlike any we've faced before," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. "It seems that the labyrinth is growing stronger." Thorn grunted in agreement, his gaze never leaving their surroundings. Arthur felt a cold chill run down his spine as he considered the implications of Vex's words. The labyrinth was evolving its creatures to match their own powers, adapting to their every move. He couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay in store for them as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels. Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur stood tall and resolute amidst the dimly lit passageway, his body pulsating with energy as he transformed into a behemoth of muscle and sinew. Vex and Thorn flanked him protectively, both wielding their weapons with determination etched upon their faces. The air in the labyrinth was thick with tension as they prepared for another encounter with one of the horrors that lurked within its twisting corridors. Vex's eyes narrowed as she scanned the passageway before them, her keen senses picking up on something unseen by the others. "Something is there," she whispered urgently. Thorn gritted his teeth, tightening his grip on his mace. As they stepped forward, a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Arthur's eyes widened in shock as he recognized it as something unlike any they had faced before. The battle began, each of them engaging the creature in their own way. Arthur fought with brutal efficiency, his transformed body tearing through the creature's limbs and crushing its many eyes beneath his powerful feet. Vex moved with grace and precision, her sword slicing through the creature's flesh as if it were butter. Thorn's mace dealt devastating blows, shattering bones and sending chunks of the creature flying in every direction. The battle raged on, the three of them struggling to keep up with the creature's relentless attacks. Arthur felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins as he fought, his body transforming even further to accommodate the battle. He roared in defiance, pouring all of his strength into each strike. Suddenly, Vex cried out, her sword slipping from her grasp as she stumbled backward. Thorn rushed to her side, shielding her from the creature's attacks. Arthur felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he refused to let it consume him. He pushed forward, using every ounce of his strength to land the final blow and bring an end to this terrible fight. Once the creature lay defeated, the three of them leaned against the stone walls, panting heavily. Arthur stared at the lifeless form before them, a mixture of relief and dread filling him. He knew that more battles awaited them as they continued their journey through the labyrinth, but he also felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way and find a way out of this cursed place. As they stood there, catching their breaths, Vex spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "We must rest," she said, "but we cannot linger here for long. The labyrinth has grown stronger with each creature we defeat." Thorn nodded in agreement, and the three of them made their way down a nearby passageway, determined to find answers and escape from this endless prison. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels, Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. He could sense it lurking just beyond the shadows, waiting for its moment to strike. But he refused to let fear control him. Together with Vex and Thorn, he would face whatever horrors lay ahead and find a way out of this place. As they pressed on through dimly lit passageways, the air grew colder and staler. The once familiar stone walls now bore strange runes that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. The group was cautious but determined as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels. Vex's eyes flickered with curiosity, her fingers tracing the symbols etched into the stone. "These are unlike any I have seen before," she murmured. Thorn grunted in response, his mace gripped tightly in his hands. He scanned their surroundings warily, ready to defend against whatever might lurk around the next corner. Arthur walked silently, his eyes locked on the ground as he searched for clues or signs of danger. The group's progress was slow but steady, and soon they found themselves standing before a large cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air shimmered slightly, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. A sense of unease washed over them as they stepped cautiously into the cavern. Ahead, shadows danced and twisted in the dim light. Arthur squinted, trying to make out what lay at the far end of the chamber. As they drew closer, a monstrous creature emerged from the darkness, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. The group sprang into action, Thorn swinging his mace with swift precision while Vex cast spells that sent bolts of energy flying towards the creature. Arthur stood at the back, his muscles rippling as he transformed, ready to face this new threat. The battle was fierce and brutal. The monster proved to be unlike any they had faced before, its limbs stretching and twisting in unpredictable ways while its eyes seemed to laugh maniacally as it lashed out at them. Thorn and Vex fought valiantly, but were struggling to land solid blows against the creature's resilient form. Arthur knew he needed to act quickly. He roared, his body contorting as he transformed into a monstrous being of his own, a towering figure with horns and scales that shimmered like molten metal in the dim light. The transformation was painful but necessary if they were to stand any chance against this new threat. With renewed strength, Arthur charged towards the creature, slamming into it with a thunderous impact. He wrestled the monster, his muscles straining as he held it back while Thorn and Vex attacked from behind. The battle raged on, but with each passing moment, they grew stronger and more focused. The creature writhed and twisted beneath Arthur's grip, its eyes burning with malice. With a final surge of strength, Arthur landed a crushing blow, shattering the monster into thousands of fragments that dissipated into the air. The cavern fell silent as the group caught their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. Vex approached the fallen creature cautiously, her eyes scanning its remains. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Arthur and Thorn joined her, their faces drawn with exhaustion but determination. "We'll find out," Thorn growled, his grip tightening around his mace. "But for now we rest." They rested in the cavernous chamber, their bodies aching from the battle, but their spirits unbroken. As they slept, Arthur dreamed of the labyrinth's mastermind, its voice echoing through the darkness. "There is much more to face before you can escape this prison." The dream faded as he woke, a sense of foreboding settling over him. Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur awoke to the distant echo of footsteps and a feeling of dread that clawed at his heart like sharp fingers. He blinked, disoriented by the dim light filtering through the stone walls. Vex and Thorn lay beside him, their breaths shallow and steady. The monstrous creature they had fought earlier was gone, but Arthur knew they would not be safe for long. "Thorn," he whispered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Wake up." The gruff warrior groaned, stirring to consciousness. He sat up, rubbing his eyes and looking around. Vex's eyes fluttered open, her gaze immediately scanning the chamber for any signs of danger. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low but filled with urgency. Arthur pointed toward the passageway they had entered from. "I heard footsteps," he said. "We should move." The three of them gathered their supplies and extinguished their lanterns, leaving only the dim light from the chamber's entrance to guide them. They crept through the labyrinthine passages, the echo of their footsteps ringing through the cold, damp stone. As they approached a fork in the path, Arthur hesitated, his senses on high alert. He could sense something unnatural about this junction. some kind of energy that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. The other two glanced at him questioningly, but he shook his head and led them down one of the paths, without explanation. They traveled for what felt like hours, their progress marked by the flickering glow of Vex's lantern. The walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. Arthur could feel the weight of his evolutions bearing down on him, a constant reminder of the price he had paid for survival. The passageway opened into a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. A chill ran through Arthur as he took in the sight, something deep within him recognizing this place from his dreams. At the far end of the cavern stood a hidden chamber, shrouded in darkness. As they approached, the footsteps grew louder and more insistent. They reached the entrance to the hidden chamber, and Arthur hesitated once more. He knew what lay within, something that could either save them or doom them all. With a heavy heart, he pushed open the massive stone doors. Inside, they found themselves face to face with the monstrous creature from their previous battle. But this time it was different. It had grown larger, its limbs multiplying and shifting, eyes flickering with an eerie green light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The creature's laughter echoed throughout the chamber, a sound that sent shivers down Arthur's spine. The battle that followed was fierce and grueling, each of them pushing their bodies beyond their limits. Thorn wielded his mace with brutal efficiency, Vex fought with a ferocity born of desperation, and Arthur transformed into a monstrous being that seemed almost alien to him now. They fought as one, united by a common goal, to survive. As the creature's final limbs crumbled to dust beneath their attacks, the room filled with an intense silence. Arthur leaned against his allies, panting heavily as he looked around the chamber. The air was thick with the scent of blood and sweat, a reminder of the cost of their victory. "We did it," Thorn murmured, his voice thick with exhaustion. Vex nodded, her eyes meeting Arthur's for a moment before looking away. He knew she was thinking of what lay ahead, more battles, more challenges, and the ever-present threat of the labyrinth's mastermind. Within the labyrinth's bowels, Arthur found himself locked in a battle against a monstrous creature with multiple eyes and limbs that flickered with an eerie green light. Vex, observing from a distance, summoned Thorn to her side as they watched Arthur struggle. "He'll need our help," she said, her voice barely audible above the din of battle. "We must intervene." Thorn, ever ready for combat, nodded and charged forward, his mace glinting in the dim light. With a fierce cry, he plunged into the fray, joining forces with Arthur against their shared enemy. The air trembled as their combined might collided with the creature's twisted form. The battle raged on, each blow sending shockwaves through the cavern walls. The creature's eyes flared brightly, casting an unsettling glow over the scene. Vex watched anxiously, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for a moment of respite. As the two warriors fought, Arthur landed a powerful strike that sent the monstrous creature reeling backwards, crashing into a towering column. The impact sent debris flying in all directions, and the air filled with dust and shattered stone. Amidst the chaos, Vex saw an opportunity to act. Stepping forward, she called upon her powers, her form shifting subtly as arcane energy swirled around her. With a mighty roar, she hurled a bolt of magic that struck the creature square in its twisted torso, sending it sprawling onto the cavern floor. The battle ended with a sigh of relief from both Vex and Thorn, who watched as Arthur took a moment to catch his breath. They had won, but they knew that their journey was far from over. As they gazed upon the defeated creature, they could not help but wonder what other challenges lay ahead in the depths of the labyrinth. Echoes of the infinite cage new conflict. New danger emerges as they enter a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The dimly lit passageways of the labyrinth stretched before them, their every step echoing through the stone corridors like a haunting symphony. Arthur, Vex, and Thorn trudged onward, their resolve unwavering as they pushed deeper into the heart of this endless maze. The air grew colder and the passageways narrowed, making their progress slow. In the distance, they saw a faint glow emanating from a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. A sense of unease washed over them as they approached the cavern's entrance, the air thick with an energy that seemed to hum ominously. As they crossed the threshold, their eyes were met by a sight that sent a shiver down their spines. The vast cavern stretched out before them, its walls adorned with strange runes and symbols glowing faintly in the darkness. In the center of the chamber stood a monstrous creature unlike any they had ever encountered. The creature was twisted and grotesque, its body a mass of limbs and eyes that seemed to flicker with an eerie green light. Its form shifted and twisted as it approached them, the air around it crackling with electricity. With a roar that echoed through the cavern, it lunged towards them, fangs bared and claws extended. Arthur, Vex, and Thorn braced themselves as the battle began. Arthur focused his energy, summoning the power of transformation to evolve into a monstrous beast of his own, muscles rippling beneath his skin as he roared in challenge. Vex raised her hands, unleashing a torrent of magic that struck the creature like a storm. Thorn gripped his mace tightly, ready to strike with all his might. The battle was fierce and brutal, each blow sending shock waves through the cavern walls. The air around them crackled with energy as they fought for their lives against this monstrous foe. Arthur landed powerful blows, but the creature seemed almost impervious to his attacks. Vex's magic seemed to have little effect, and Thorn's strikes were met with a deafening cacophony of roars and growls. In a critical moment, Vex summoned her powers once more, hurling a bolt of pure energy at the creature. It struck true, sending the monstrous being reeling back. Arthur seized the opportunity, rushing forward to deliver the final blow. With a cry of triumph, he landed his fist upon its twisted form, shattering it into fragments that dissipated into darkness. Exhausted and battered, they stood in silence for a moment, staring at the remains of their foe. Slowly, they turned to each other, exchanging weary smiles as they realized they had survived another encounter within this endless labyrinth. As they began to make their way out of the cavern, they noticed something peculiar. The strange symbols, etched into the stone walls, seemed to glow brighter, pulsing with an energy that made their skin prickle. With a sense of unease, they continued onward, determined to uncover the truth about this place and find a way out. But the labyrinth was not done testing them yet. As they ventured deeper, new dangers emerged from every corner, each more terrifying than the last. The trials seemed endless, and with each passing moment the stakes grew higher. They were trapped in this place, and they would have to find a way to overcome the challenges that lay ahead if they wanted to survive. The dimly lit passageway stretched on for miles, the flickering light from their lanterns barely illuminating the towering columns, adorned with strange runes etched into the stone walls. The air was thick and oppressive, heavy with the stench of decay and rot. Arthur, Vex, and Thorn trudged through the passageway, exhausted but determined to press onward. "We need rest," Thorn growled, glancing back at the others as they caught up with him. "It's been days since we last stopped." Vex nodded in agreement. "I sense something, a presence. I believe it's closer than ever before." She paused, scanning her surroundings. "We must press on." They trudged forward, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. The passageway opened up to reveal a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. An eerie green light emanated from some of the symbols, flickering softly like distant stars in the darkness. As they stepped into the cavern, Arthur couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had never seen anything quite like this before. The air was thick with anticipation and danger. He glanced over at Vex and Thorn, both of them looking just as unsettled. Vex spoke up. "This is the heart of the labyrinth." She turned to face Arthur. "We're close, but I fear our journey has only begun." As they moved deeper into the cavern, a sudden rustling came from one of the shadows. A monstrous creature emerged, its multiple eyes glowing with an eerie green light. It roared, revealing rows of jagged teeth and long, spindly limbs that seemed to writhe and contort in unnatural ways. Arthur braced himself as the creature charged at them, its limbs flailing wildly. Thorn raised his mace, readying himself for battle, while Vex called forth bolts of magic, preparing to defend them against the monstrous beast. The battle raged on, each blow landing with a sickening thud as they fought tooth and nail to survive. Arthur struggled, feeling weaker than he had in ages. His body ached from the countless battles they had fought through this labyrinth, and his mind was clouded with exhaustion. Vex's voice rang out through the cavern as she called on her powers to bolster their resolve. "Hold on. We cannot let this creature defeat us now." Her words echoed off the stone walls, giving them renewed strength as they continued to fight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Arthur landed a decisive blow, causing the monstrous creature to crumble into dust. They stood there for a moment, panting heavily and trying to catch their breath. Thorn spoke first, his voice heavy with relief. "We did it. We fought our way through this nightmare." He looked around the cavern, taking in its strange beauty amidst the horror that had just transpired. "But we're not out of danger yet." Vex nodded in agreement. "No, we are merely at the heart of it." She turned to face Arthur. "We must press onward and uncover the truth behind this place." They gathered their strength and set off once more, determined to continue their journey through the labyrinth and find a way out. As they ventured deeper, they knew that each step brought them closer to answers, but also to new and more powerful challenges. They pressed onward, their spirits unbroken and their resolve stronger than ever before. Echoes of the infinite cage Arthur's breath misted in the cold air as he staggered through the vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. Vex and Thorn trailed behind him, their faces etched with concern and exhaustion. The battle against the monstrous creature had taken a toll on them all, but they refused to let it deter them from their quest. "We can't rest here," Arthur said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "We need to find shelter and recover before the next challenge." Vex nodded in agreement, her eyes flickering with a faint glow as she cast a protective spell around them. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels, the air grew colder, and the strange symbols etched into the walls seemed to watch them with a malevolent gaze. Suddenly, a dimly lit passageway caught Thorn's eye. "There," pointing towards the opening. "That could be our shelter." The group cautiously made their way down the narrow corridor, their lanterns casting long shadows on the stone walls. The air grew colder and more oppressive as they ventured deeper, but they pressed on, determined to find refuge from the labyrinth's harsh conditions. As they reached the end of the passageway, they found themselves in a large cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water. In the center of the cavern stood a stone chamber, its entrance guarded by a monstrous creature unlike any they had faced before. The beast's eyes flickered with an eerie green light, and it let out a growl that echoed through the cavern. The group froze in fear, their hearts pounding in their chests as they stared at the creature. "We can't stay here," Arthur said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have to find another way." Vex nodded in agreement, her eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. "I can try to cast a spell to distract it, but we need to be ready to move quickly." With a nod, Thorn gripped his mace tightly, preparing himself for battle. Arthur took a deep breath and focused on his alchemical powers, summoning the strength he needed to face the creature. As Vex cast her spell, the creature let out another growl and charged at them. The battle was fierce, with the group working together to fend off the beast's attacks. Arthur transformed into a powerful beast, his body covered in scales and his eyes blazing with fire as he fought with all his might. Vex used her magic to protect them, weaving spells that held the creature at bay. Thorn fought with a fierce determination, landing blow after blow against the monstrous beast. As they battled, Arthur felt a surge of power coursing through him, and he knew that this was not just another battle for survival, but a test of their strength and resolve. He summoned all his powers and landed a decisive blow, causing the creature to disintegrate into nothingness. Exhausted but victorious, they collapsed in the center of the cavern, their hearts racing as they caught their breath. Vex cast a healing spell on them, mending their injuries and restoring their strength. As they recovered, Thorn spoke up. "We need to keep moving," he said, his voice heavy with determination. "The labyrinth is full of challenges, and we can't let our guard down." Arthur nodded in agreement. "We'll rest here for a while, but then we press on. We won't stop until we find a way out of this place." As Arthur, Vex, and Thorn ventured deeper into the labyrinth, they found themselves in a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was thick with an ominous energy, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Suddenly, a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Arthur immediately felt his body start to change, the familiar sensation of evolving washing over him. His muscles bulged as he grew larger, transforming into a fierce beast with powerful legs and sharp claws. Thorn stood at his side, his mace ready for combat. Vex, on the other hand, drew upon her magic, forming protective shields around them all. The battle was intense, each blow exchanged with the monstrous creature causing ripples throughout the cavern. The air crackled with energy as the beast's eyes flickered with an eerie green light. Arthur roared, slashing at the creature with his powerful claws as Thorn swung his mace with precision and fury. Vex maintained their defenses, casting spells to keep them safe from the monstrous creature's relentless attacks. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, each side refusing to back down. Just when it seemed that the beast had gained the upper hand, Arthur landed a decisive blow, severing one of its limbs and sending the creature stumbling backward. The group took advantage of the momentary weakness, pushing forward with renewed determination. Thorn struck again, his mace connecting with the creature's head in a thunderous crash. The monstrous creature collapsed, defeated. Arthur transformed back into his human form, panting and exhausted but triumphant. They had faced another challenge and emerged victorious, though they knew there would be many more to come as they continued their journey through the labyrinth. After healing their injuries and regaining strength, they ventured onward, determined to uncover the truth about this place and find a way out. The group pressed forward, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they could face whatever dangers awaited them. They traveled for what felt like days, their journey taking them through dimly lit passageways and stone chambers filled with strange symbols etched into the walls. Eventually, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance guarded by a massive door adorned with intricate runes. Vex examined the runes carefully, her fingers tracing over the ancient markings as she mumbled incantations under her breath. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a stone chamber within. They entered cautiously, their torches casting flickering shadows on the walls. Inside, they found countless tomes bound in leather and gold, each containing knowledge that could help them better understand this place. As they pored over the ancient texts, they discovered references to other trapped souls who had come before them, hinting at a hidden curriculum that could teach them how to evolve into powerful beasts to survive the impending apocalypse. Excited by the discovery, Arthur, Vex, and Thorn knew they had found something invaluable, a key to unlocking their true potential, and possibly a way out of this labyrinth. Echoes of the infinite cage, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a dim glow on the stone walls of the labyrinthine passageway. Arthur, Vex, and Thorn trudged through the winding corridors. The air was heavy with the scent of ancient dust and decay. The ground beneath their feet seemed to echo with the footsteps of countless souls who had passed this way before them. The group had fought their way through numerous monstrous creatures in search of a place to rest, and though they were weary from battle, there was no time for respite. They pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the labyrinth and find a way out. As they rounded a bend, a sudden shift in the air made Vex pause. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes narrowing as she peered into the darkness ahead. Something isn't right. Thorn, ever vigilant, drew his mace and moved forward cautiously, scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Arthur followed close behind, his senses heightened by the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The passageway opened up into a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was thick with an eerie green mist that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. As they entered, another monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Arthur felt his body begin to change, his muscles bulging and elongating as he morphed into a massive beast with sharp claws and teeth. Thorn and Vex readied themselves for battle as the creature charged towards them. The fight was brutal and intense, the group using every ounce of their strength and skill to hold off the relentless creature. Arthur landed powerful blows that sent shockwaves throughout the cavern, while Thorn and Vex traded attacks with the monster's numerous limbs. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Arthur managed to land the final blow, sending the creature crashing to the ground in a heap of twitching muscle and bone. The group caught their breath, panting heavily as they surveyed the carnage around them. Arthur, Vex, and Thorn crept along the damp stone walls of a narrow corridor, their lanterns flickering weakly against the darkness. The air grew thick with the smell of decay, and an eerie silence hung over them as they neared another cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The trio tensed, their senses on high alert. "This feels different," Thorn murmured, his voice barely audible. Vex's eyes narrowed as she studied the runes carved into the walls. "We are getting closer to the heart of this labyrinth." Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the passageway, causing them all to jump and tighten their grip on their weapons. Arthur's eyes flickered with a hint of unease as he transformed into his monstrous form, his muscles rippling beneath his skin. A creature emerged from the shadows, its multiple eyes glowing with an eerie green light, flickering like distant stars. It moved with a grace that belied its twisted mass of limbs and skin, its body twisting and contorting as it advanced on them. "We must fight together," Thorn growled, readying his mace for battle. Vex nodded, her eyes narrowed in determination. The creature lunged at them, its multiple arms flailing wildly. Arthur roared, transforming into a massive beast as the battle began. His monstrous form towered over the creature, but it remained undeterred, dodging and weaving around his attacks with an unsettling agility. Vex and Thorn fought alongside him, their weapons striking against the creature's tough hide. The air around them filled with the sounds of clashing steel and grunts of effort as they struggled to gain the upper hand. Arthur landed a powerful blow, sending the creature reeling back. It snarled, its eyes flaring with anger, and leapt at him again, but this time Arthur was ready. He caught it mid-air, his massive jaws clamping down on its body with a crushing force that left it lifeless on the ground. Exhausted but victorious, they stared at the creature's remains in silence. "We must rest," Vex said, her voice heavy with fatigue. They made their way to a nearby cavernous chamber, where they found an ancient tome bound in leather and gold. Its pages held secrets that might help them unravel the mysteries of their prison. As they read aloud, they realized that this labyrinth was not just a random trap, but part of a grand experiment designed to create the ultimate evolved being. Their hearts heavy with new knowledge, they continued onward, sensing that the true challenge lay ahead. The labyrinth's mastermind would not make their escape easy, and they knew they would have to face many more monstrous creatures before reaching the end of this twisted maze. Echoes of the Infinite Cage, Episode 33, each a green-eyed beast. The dimly lit passageway stretched out before them, a labyrinthine path that seemed to go on forever. Vex and Thorn walked with caution, scanning their surroundings warily for any signs of danger. Arthur, still recovering from his transformation, struggled to keep up, his heavy steps echoing through the hollow corridors. A sudden noise caused them all to stop and listen intently. The air grew thick, and they could feel a chill run down their spines. Vex looked around nervously. I sense something, another creature. Her eyes narrowed as she strained to hear any sound. Thorn clutched his mace tighter, bracing himself for battle. We must be prepared. Arthur, if you can't keep up, stay behind us. Arthur nodded, trying to catch his breath and steady his shaking limbs. He could feel the remnants of his transformation still coursing through him, leaving him weak but also stronger than ever before. The noise came again, closer this time. From the shadows, a monstrous creature emerged. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, its multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light that seemed to pierce their very souls. Its limbs twisted and contorted, reaching out towards them like tendrils of darkness. Thorn charged forward, his mace raised high. Vex sent a bolt of energy crackling through the air, striking the creature squarely in the chest. Arthur transformed again, his body growing larger and more monstrous as he prepared for battle. The creature roared, its multiple eyes glowing brighter than ever before. It lunged at them, its limbs writhing like a snake. Thorn fought with all his might, the sound of steel against stone echoing through the passageway. Vex's energy blast danced around the creature, tearing into its flesh. Arthur took a deep breath and unleashed a torrent of flames from his mouth, engulfing the creature in an inferno. It roared in pain, thrashing about wildly as it tried to escape the flames. But Arthur was relentless, his flames growing hotter and more intense with each passing moment. Finally, the creature collapsed to the ground, defeated. Arthur stood over it, panting heavily as he shifted back to his human form. Vex and Thorn approached him cautiously, their eyes filled with awe and fear. "We did it," Thorn said, a hint of relief in his voice. Arthur nodded, still catching his breath. He could feel the remnants of the creature's essence coursing through him, filling him with power he had never felt before. He knew that this battle was far from over, but for now, they had won. The dimly lit passageway stretched before them, casting long shadows that danced upon the ancient stone walls adorned with strange runes. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the distant echoes of their heartbeats. Arthur's eyes scanned the walls, searching for any sign or clue as to where they should go next. "Vex, have you found anything useful in those ancient scrolls?" Thorn asked, breaking the silence. He held a leather-bound tome with gold embossing, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and strange diagrams. Vex, who had been studying it intently, looked up and shook her head. "I haven't found anything yet, but I believe these scrolls hold the key to unlocking more secrets within this labyrinth," she said, her voice laced with determination. "We must keep searching." Arthur nodded grimly. They had been traveling for what felt like days without finding a way out of the maze, and their supplies were dwindling. The monstrous creatures they encountered seemed to grow more powerful with each passing moment. But Arthur refused to let despair take hold. He had survived countless battles in his immortal existence, and he would not give up now. "Let's press on," Arthur said, his voice firm. "We may find something that can help us in the next chamber." The group continued through the passageway, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls as they ventured deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. Suddenly, a low rumbling sound echoed through the cavern, growing louder and more insistent with each passing second. Arthur's senses flared, alerting him to danger. "Monstrous creature!" Thorn yelled, drawing his mace and preparing for battle. Vex pulled out one of her small vials filled with a swirling green liquid, the contents glowing faintly in her hand as she held it up to ward off any attackers. Arthur transformed, his body elongating and hardening as he took on his monstrous form, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The sound of shuffling grew louder, and soon a massive monstrous creature emerged from the shadows. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, a twisted mass of limbs, eyes, and teeth that glowed with an eerie green light. The creature roared as it charged towards them, its body pulsating with energy. Arthur lunged forward, his monstrous form igniting flames from his mouth as he met the beast head-on. Thorn swung his mace with all his might, the weapon connecting with the creature's twisted limbs. Vex hurled her vial at the monster, the green liquid splashing across its body and causing it to scream in agony. The battle raged on, the group fighting for their lives against this monstrous foe. Arthur used his flames to keep the creature at bay, while Thorn and Vex attacked from different angles. The air grew thick with smoke and the scent of burning flesh as they fought, each blow bringing them one step closer to victory. Finally, Arthur landed a powerful punch that sent the monster reeling back, its body crashing into the stone walls. He took one last look at the creature before it dissolved into a pile of ash, and he felt a renewed sense of determination. This was just another obstacle to overcome on their quest for freedom. "We did it," Thorn said, panting heavily as they caught their breath. "But we can't rest yet. I have a feeling more creatures are coming." Vex nodded grimly. "We must press on," she said, already scanning the walls for any new clues or secrets. "There is still so much to learn about this labyrinth." Arthur looked at the group, pride swelling in his chest. Together, they had faced their fears and emerged victorious. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but he was ready. They were a team, bound together by their shared goal of escaping this prison and finding a way back to the world above. Arthur said, turning towards the passageway leading deeper into the labyrinth. "We have a long journey ahead of us." And echoes of the infinite cage, the dim light from lanterns flickered eerily against stone walls adorned with strange runes. The air was thick with tension as Arthur, Thorn, and Vex ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels. Behind them lay a trail of defeated monstrous creatures, their twisted bodies serving as grim reminders of the challenges they had faced thus far. Arthur felt the weight of his immortal existence bearing down upon him as he traversed the narrow corridor. His heart raced at every turn, each labyrinthine passageway a potential trap or ambush from the creatures lurking within. The labyrinth seemed to be growing more complex with each step, its twists and turns disorienting even for one such as Arthur, who had walked these halls for centuries. Vex's eyes darted back and forth, as she scanned the walls for any signs of danger or clues that might lead them closer to escape. The enigmatic woman had a wealth of knowledge about the labyrinth, but even she could not predict what lay ahead. Despite her power, she seemed anxious, her usually calm demeanor replaced by a palpable sense of unease. Thorn, ever the stoic warrior, remained focused on the path before them. His large frame was tense with determination as he kept a watchful eye for any signs of danger. He had been separated from his fellow prisoners for what felt like an eternity, and was determined to find a way out for himself and those he cared about. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the air grew colder, the temperature dropping with each step. The passageways narrowed, forcing them to tread carefully as they navigated the winding paths. Arthur could feel the weight of his evolutions pressing down on him, the countless forms he had taken over the centuries now a part of his very essence. The group's journey was interrupted by a sudden, deafening roar that echoed through the labyrinth. A monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. The air crackled with electricity as it advanced towards them, its multiple eyes flickering menacingly. Without hesitation, Arthur transformed into his monstrous form, flames erupting from his mouth as he prepared to face the creature head-on. Thorn and Vex readied their weapons, their eyes locked on the beast before them. The battle that ensued was fierce, each blow landing with a thunderous crash. The monster proved to be unlike any they had faced before, its multiple limbs and eyes making it difficult to predict its movements. Arthur's transformation seemed to have no effect on this creature, its skin seemingly impervious to his flames. The group fought valiantly, but the beast proved relentless, pushing them back towards a dead end. As the battle raged on, Thorn noticed something peculiar about the creature. Its eyes, each one filled with an intensity that seemed almost human. In that moment he felt a spark of recognition, a connection to this creature that left him confused and disoriented. Vex, sensing his hesitation, shouted encouragement, urging them forward. "We've come too far to let this beast defeat us now," she called out, Her voice echoing through the labyrinth, Thorn found renewed strength in her words, focusing on the task at hand as they continued their fight against the monstrous creature. Arthur, sensing that the battle was nearing its end, summoned every last ounce of his strength and focused his flames towards a single point. With a final cry, he hurled his fiery projectile at the creature, striking it with devastating force. The beast let out a roar of pain as the fire consumed it, its form dissolving into nothing but smoke and ash. Exhausted, the group collapsed against the wall, their hearts racing with adrenaline. Thorn stared at the smoldering remains of the creature, his mind swirling with confusion. He could not shake the feeling that he had somehow been connected to this beast, as if it held some piece of his past. Vex studied the charred remains, her eyes narrowing in thought. "We must find a way to understand these creatures," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They hold the key to our escape." With a renewed sense of purpose, they pressed onward into the labyrinth, determined to uncover its secrets and find their way out. They had faced countless challenges thus far, but were determined to continue their journey, no matter the cost. The labyrinth remained a mystery, its depths filled with danger, but they refused to give up hope. As they ventured further into the labyrinth, they encountered more monstrous creatures, each one more terrifying than the last. But they faced them head-on, their determination unwavering. They had come too far to turn back now, and they would not let the labyrinth defeat them. The dimly lit passageway stretched out before them like an endless tunnel, its walls adorned with strange runes that seemed to glow faintly in the flickering lantern light. The air grew thick with tension as Arthur, Thorn, and Vex continued their journey deeper into the labyrinth. The echo of their footsteps reverberated off the stone walls, a constant reminder of their isolation. As they approached another cavernous chamber, a low growl emanated from the darkness. A monstrous creature lurked in the shadows, its multiple eyes and limbs twitching ominously. Arthur's heart raced as he prepared for battle. The creature lunged forward, revealing an array of sharp teeth and claws. Thorn hesitated, a strange feeling gnawing at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this creature was somehow connected to his past, but the thought was quickly pushed aside as the battle commenced. Arthur hurled a flurry of fireballs at the beast, the heat and light illuminating its twisted form. The creature retaliated with a shower of acid, burning the air around them and leaving scorch marks on the stone floor. The battle raged on, each side landing heavy blows. Thorn watched as Arthur's flames began to falter under the creature's relentless assault. Vex stepped forward, her mace glowing with an intense light. As she struck at the beast with all her might, the creature roared in response, its eyes flickering with an eerie green light that seemed to pierce their very souls. Arthur, sensing the danger, gathered his strength and hurled a final fiery projectile, striking the creature's head with a thunderous explosion. The beast let out one final roar before collapsing into a pile of twisted limbs and slime. Thorn stared at the remains, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the strange connection he felt towards the creature. As they continued their journey, the air grew colder, and the passageways narrowed even further. The strange runes etched into the stone walls seemed to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows that danced across the group's faces. The weight of their situation pressed down on them, each step bringing them closer to an unknown fate. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the distance, illuminating another cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. As they approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a hidden chamber at its center. Inside, an ancient tome bound in leather and gold sat on a pedestal, surrounded by small vials filled with a swirling green liquid. Echoes of the infinite cage. Arthur stood at the entrance of another cavern, his eyes scanning the towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The dim light from lanterns flickered off the ancient runes, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. Vex and Thorn followed closely behind him, their weapons ready as they prepared for whatever dangers lay ahead. "We've traveled far," said Thorn, his voice low and gruff, "but we're no closer to finding that accursed tome." Vex sighed, her eyes narrowing at the strange symbols. These runes are unlike anything I've ever seen before. Perhaps they hold the key to unlocking this chamber. She knelt down near one of the columns and began tracing her fingers along the ancient etchings. Arthur took a step closer, his gaze fixed on Vex's hands as she traced the symbols. He felt a strange energy pulsating through the stone beneath her fingertips, and he knew that they were onto something. As Vex continued to study the runes, Arthur scanned the chamber for any signs of movement. "Be careful," he warned, his voice filled with concern. "We don't know what lurks in these caverns." Suddenly, a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. The room was plunged into darkness as it lunged at Arthur, its multiple limbs whipping through the air with lightning-fast speed. Thorn let out a battle cry and charged at the creature, his mace connecting with its torso with a sickening crunch. Vex quickly moved to join the fight, her sword slicing through the air as she danced around the monstrous beast. Arthur unleashed a wave of flames, enveloping the creature in a fiery inferno, but despite their efforts, the beast seemed unfazed by the flames, its multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light that seemed to intensify with each passing second. The battle raged on, the three allies battling against the monstrous creature's relentless attacks. Arthur felt his energy waning as he struggled to maintain his flames. Vex and Thorn fought valiantly beside him, but it seemed like an endless struggle. Just when all hope seemed lost, Arthur landed a final blow, the beast collapsing to the ground in a heap of twisting limbs. Vex approached the fallen creature, her eyes wide with shock as she surveyed its lifeless form. "We did it," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. Thorn grunted in agreement, his gaze fixed on the defeated beast. Arthur stood beside them, his body trembling from the exertion of battle. "What now?" asked Thorn, his voice filled with exhaustion. Vex looked up at him, her eyes filled with determination. "Now we press on," she said, her gaze fixed on the ancient tome they sought. "Our salvation lies within those pages." Arthur, Thorn, and Vex found themselves standing before a large cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into stone walls. The air was thick with tension as they prepared for another encounter in the labyrinth. Their lanterns flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Another creature," Thorn muttered under his breath. "We must be getting closer." Vex's eyes narrowed as she scanned the cavern walls, looking for any clues that might help them defeat the upcoming challenge. She spotted a faint glimmer of light coming from the far corner of the cavern. Approaching cautiously, they found an ancient tome bound in leather and gold, sitting atop one of the towering columns. As they reached out to touch it, another monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes glowing with an eerie green light. Its cries echoed through the cavern as it lunged towards them. Arthur quickly raised his mace, ready to defend against the attack. The creature was unlike any they had faced before, with multiple eyes that seemed to flicker with an unnatural energy. As it closed in on them, Thorn and Vex readied their weapons, bracing themselves for battle. The fight was fierce, with the creature proving to be a formidable opponent. Its limbs moved with surprising speed, striking out at them with precision. Arthur landed several powerful blows, but it seemed to shrug off each one as if they were nothing more than minor inconveniences. Vex took advantage of the creature's momentary distraction and hurled a small vial filled with a swirling green liquid at it. The potion struck the creature squarely in the chest, causing it to writhe in pain before collapsing to the ground. As they caught their breath, Thorn approached the fallen creature cautiously, studying it closely. "It seems our potions are more effective than we thought." Vex nodded, her eyes never leaving the creature's limp form. "We must be getting closer to something important. I sense a connection between these creatures and the labyrinth itself." Arthur looked around the cavern, taking in the strange symbols etched into the walls. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were close to uncovering the truth behind their imprisonment. "We should press on," he said finally. "There may be more answers waiting for us further down." That echoes of the infinite cage, the dimly lit passageway stretched out before them, stone walls adorned with strange runes and ancient symbols, casting flickering shadows across the group's faces. Vex clutched the ancient tome tightly, her eyes scanning its pages as they walked deeper into the labyrinth. Thorn led the way, his mace gripped firmly in his large hands. He gritted his teeth, his stoic expression betraying his sense of duty and determination to help free their fellow prisoners. "We're close," he murmured, striding onward without pause. Arthur walked alongside Vex, glancing between the tome and the labyrinthine passageways that stretched out before them. He felt a familiar sensation in the pit of his stomach as they ventured further into this strange world. The knowledge of his immortal existence weighed heavily on him, and he struggled to reconcile it with his desire to escape. As they traveled through the labyrinth, their path suddenly became treacherous. Shadows danced in the corners of their eyes, and a faint hum echoed off the stone walls. Vex's grip tightened on the ancient tome as she scanned the pages for guidance. "Prepare yourselves," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum. A monstrous creature emerged from the shadows, its many limbs and multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light. Thorn roared in challenge, readying his mace as the battle began. Arthur transformed into a hulking beast, his muscles rippling beneath his scaly skin as he prepared to defend against the creature's attack. Vex held onto the ancient tome tightly, her eyes locked on the monster as she chanted an incantation. The battle raged on, their attacks and counterattacks sending sparks flying through the air. The monstrous creature proved to be a formidable opponent, its electric charges crackling with power. Vex poured everything she had into her potion, casting it at the creature as it lunged towards them. The green liquid struck the creature's multiple eyes, and it let out a blood-curdling scream before collapsing onto the ground. Exhausted and battered, the group leaned against the stone walls of the dimly lit passageway. Thorn surveyed their surroundings, his face set in a grim line. "We need to find a way out," he growled, clenching his mace. Vex nodded in agreement, her eyes scanning the ancient tome for answers. "The symbols here are familiar," she murmured as she traced her fingers over the pages. "It seems we're close to finding the key." In the dimly lit passageway, the group caught their breath after defeating the monstrous creature with flickering eyes. The air was thick and heavy with exhaustion as they surveyed one another, the scent of burnt fur lingering in the air. "We can't rest here," Thorn growled, his voice gravelly from battle. "We need to keep moving." Arthur nodded weakly, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Vex looked up from the ancient tome she clutched tightly, her eyes scanning the strange symbols etched into the stone walls around them. "The key is close," she murmured, a hint of excitement in her voice. "I can feel it." As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth's bowels, they encountered another cavernous chamber filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. The air was cold and damp, sending shivers down their spines. The group cautiously approached a hidden alcove, where an ancient tome bound in leather and gold rested upon a pedestal. "That's it," Vex breathed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "The tome we've been searching for." Thorn stepped forward, his mace poised protectively in front of him. With a deep breath, he reached out and picked up the tome. As soon as his hand touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him, causing him to stumble backward. "What is this?" Arthur asked, eyes wide with concern. Vex flipped open the tome, revealing pages filled with strange runes and diagrams. "But I think it might be our ticket out of here." Just as they began to celebrate their find, a monstrous creature emerged from another passageway, its eyes glowing with an eerie green light. The beast roared, revealing a twisted mass of limbs and tentacles that writhed in the dim light. Thorn quickly stepped forward, brandishing his mace, while Arthur prepared to transform. "Stay back," Thorn warned, his voice thick with determination. "I'll deal with this." Arthur hesitated for a moment before nodding, knowing full well that they needed every advantage they could get in this dangerous place. As the battle raged on, Vex searched frantically through the tome, looking for any clues that might help them defeat this new foe. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher, and the tension between the three grew taut. In the midst of the chaos, Arthur felt a strange sensation coursing through him, a feeling he had not experienced in centuries. His body began to change, morphing into a hulking beast with thick scales and powerful limbs. He roared, charging toward the monstrous creature with renewed determination. The battle raged on, each blow landing with the force of thunder. As the green-eyed monster writhed beneath Arthur's powerful blows, Vex found a page in the tome filled with strange runes and a diagram of a key. She traced her fingers over the symbols, whispering an incantation that caused the air around them to shimmer with energy. With a final surge of strength, Arthur landed the final blow, causing the creature to collapse in a heap at their feet. Exhausted from battle and relief, the group leaned against the stone walls, catching their breath. Thorn surveyed the fallen beast, his gaze cold and calculating. "We're closer than ever," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we can't let our guard down." Echoes of the infinite cage, the dimly lit passageway stretched out before them, the air thick with anticipation. They had faced countless trials in their time, trapped within this labyrinth, but none as harrowing as the monstrous creature they encountered now. Its body twisted and contorted, multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light. Thorn gripped his mace tighter, his knuckles turning white as he prepared himself for battle. Vex held a small vial filled with swirling green liquid tightly in her hand, her gaze fixed on the creature before them. Arthur took a deep breath and shifted his form, summoning the strength required to face this new challenge. The creature snarled, its multiple eyes gleaming as it lunged towards them. Thorn swung his mace, connecting with the creature's side, sending it staggering back. Vex threw the vial at the creature, the green liquid splashing across its body, before it let out a deafening roar and charged forward once more. Arthur transformed further, growing larger and stronger, ready to face the monster head-on. The battle raged on, the three of them working together to keep the beast at bay. The creature's limbs flailed wildly as they dodged and countered its attacks, their every strike chipping away at its form. Finally, Arthur landed a devastating blow, causing the creature to collapse in a heap on the ground. Exhausted but victorious, they caught their breath, knowing that the labyrinth still held many more challenges for them to face. Yet, they were one step closer to freedom. "We did it," Thorn said, his voice heavy with emotion, "but we can't rest yet. We have to keep moving forward." Vex nodded, her eyes never leaving the fallen creature. The key, it might be closed now. Arthur looked around, scanning their surroundings for any sign of the ancient tome or the hidden chamber it was said to be in. They had come too far to stop now. He felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through his veins. "Let's press on," he said, turning towards the next passageway. "We'll find that key and escape this wretched place." In the dimly lit passageway, Thorn stood guard as Arthur and Vex examined the ancient tome they had discovered in their latest battle against a monstrous creature with multiple eyes and twisted limbs. The pages were filled with arcane symbols and diagrams that seemed to dance before their eyes, revealing secrets long forgotten. "We must be careful," Vex warned as she traced her fingers over one of the strange runes etched into the stone walls lining the passageway. "The labyrinth is a complex place, filled with traps and illusions." Thorn grunted in agreement, his grip tightening around the mace he had taken from their latest foe. "I'm not about to let anything harm any of you," he said, glancing back at Arthur. "We need to find a way out of this place." Arthur nodded solemnly, his eyes scanning the pages before him. "This tome could be our key to escaping this accursed labyrinth," he murmured as he examined one of the diagrams. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the passageway, causing them all to pause in fear. From the darkness at the end of the tunnel, a monstrous creature emerged, its eyes flickering with an eerie green light. Its twisted limbs seemed to writhe and shift as it stepped forward, revealing multiple sets of jaws filled with razor-sharp teeth. Thorn let out a battle cry and charged at the creature, swinging his mace with all his might. The creature snarled, its multiple eyes flashing in the dim light. Arthur and Vex followed suit, using their combined strength to fight the beast back, but it seemed to be almost indestructible. In a desperate move, Arthur reached for one of the small vials filled with swirling green liquid he had found earlier and threw it at the creature. The fluid struck the creature's eye, causing it to scream in pain and stumble backward. Seizing their chance, they managed to land a series of blows that finally brought the creature down. Arthur panting heavily, he looked around at his allies. "We did it," he said with a sense of disbelief. "But we must be more careful in the future." Vex nodded grimly. There are still many dangers lurking within this labyrinth." Thorn grunted, looking down at the defeated creature. "We'll face them all," he said resolutely. Together, as they continued their journey through the labyrinth, they found themselves in a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. It was darker than any place they had been before, the only light coming from flickering lanterns placed at strategic intervals along the passageways. In one of these dimly lit corners, they discovered another ancient tome bound in leather and gold. This one seemed even older than the first, its pages brittle with age. As Arthur carefully opened it, he found a page adorned with runes and a diagram of a key. His heart raced as he realized what it might mean. "We may have found something," he said excitedly. "This tome contains instructions on how to unlock the labyrinth." Vex's eyes narrowed as she studied the page. "It will be a challenge, but we must find all of these keys if we are to escape this place." Thorn grunted in agreement. "We can do this. We have come too far to give up now." Echoes of the infinite cage. In the dimly lit passageway, Arthur, Thorn, and Vex huddled around a small lantern, examining a leather-bound tome with gold embossing. The book was filled with cryptic symbols that seemed to dance before their eyes. "This is the key," Thorn said, his voice gruff with determination. "It's our way out of here." Vex looked up from the tome, her eyes flickering with a strange green light. "But we need more than just this tome to unlock the labyrinth. We must find all the keys and pieces of the key." Arthur nodded in agreement, his mind racing as he considered their next move. "We've come too far to let up now," he said with a grim determination. "I will continue evolving, pushing myself further than I ever thought possible." As they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine passages, they encountered a monstrous creature unlike any they had faced before. It was a twisted mass of limbs and eyes that flickered, with an eerie green light. The beast lunged at them, sending them scrambling for cover. Thorn and Vex fought valiantly, their weapons glinting in the dim light as they battled the creature. Arthur watched as Thorn landed a powerful blow, sending the creature reeling. But it wasn't enough to defeat the beast. It regained its footing and roared, its eyes burning with fury. Arthur knew he couldn't let his comrades down. He had to do something. He reached into the pouch at his waist and pulled out a small vial filled with swirling green liquid. With a deep breath, he chugged the potion, feeling it course through his veins like fire. His body began to transform once more, his limbs elongating and hardening as new muscles rippled beneath his skin. He felt stronger than ever before, ready to face this monstrous creature head-on. With a battle cry, Arthur charged at the beast, his new form glowing with an eerie green light that mirrored the creature's own eyes. The two clashed in a fierce struggle, their weapons clashing and sparks flying as they grappled with each other. Thorn and Vex joined the fray, their combined efforts finally managing to land the final blow on the monstrous creature. As they caught their breath after the battle, Thorn looked at Arthur with newfound respect. "You're something else," he said. Arthur smiled, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. "I'll keep evolving until we find a way out of this place." Vex nodded, her eyes glowing even brighter than before. "And I'll help you every step of the way." As the trio ventured deeper into the heart of the labyrinth, they felt the air growing colder and more oppressive. The dimly lit passageways seemed to stretch on forever, the walls adorned with strange runes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Arthur could sense the presence of another monstrous creature lurking ahead. "What do you make of these symbols?" Vex asked Thorn, who was examining the markings on the walls. "They seem to be some kind of map or guide." Thorn grunted in response. He took a torch from his belt and held it closer to the runes, illuminating them for a brief moment before they flickered out. "It's difficult to tell with such poor light. We need more information if we are to make any sense of this place." Arthur nodded in agreement. He clutched the ancient tome tightly, feeling its power growing stronger as they delved deeper into the labyrinth. "We should find a way to decipher these symbols," he said determinedly. "Perhaps there is some hidden knowledge that can help us escape." As they continued down the passageway, the sounds of dripping water echoed through the air. The ground beneath their feet grew slicker and more uneven as they approached a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. At the center of the cavern, a monstrous creature with multiple eyes and twisted limbs stood waiting, its body pulsating with an eerie green light. "That's one hell of a beast," Thorn muttered, his hand gripping his mace tightly. "We've got our work cut out for us." Arthur felt the familiar surge of power coursing through him as he opened the small vial filled with swirling green liquid and drank its contents. As the potion took effect, his muscles grew denser and stronger, his senses sharper. In this form, he could feel every crack in the stone beneath their feet, every breath of the monstrous creature as it stalked towards them. Together, they braced themselves for battle. Arthur charged forward, his enhanced body slamming into the monster with a force that sent them both tumbling to the ground. The beast roared, its many eyes flashing with an eerie green light as it scrambled to its feet. Vex and Thorn joined in the fray, their weapons striking out at the monstrous creature with precision and skill. The battle raged on, each blow landing with a force that shook the cavern to its foundations. The beast's limbs twisted and contorted as it fought back, its eyes glowing brighter with every strike. Arthur could feel the power coursing through him, his body growing more powerful with each passing moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Arthur landed a blow that sent the beast sprawling to the ground. With a final cry of triumph, he brought his mace down upon its head, shattering it into pieces. The cavern fell silent save for the sound of their heavy breathing. "That was intense," Vex said, panting slightly as she surveyed the remains of the monster. "We should press on and see what else this labyrinth holds." Echoes of the infinite cage, the group approached a dimly lit passageway, the air thick with an oppressive silence that weighed heavily on their shoulders. Lanterns flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows upon the stone walls adorned with strange runes. "What do you make of these symbols?" Vex asked, examining a set of glyphs etched into the wall. "They seem familiar." Arthur peered at the markings, squinting in the dim light. He reached out, tracing his fingers over the symbols, and a sudden jolt coursed through him. The air around them crackled with energy as a swirling vortex appeared before them. "We found it," Thorn exclaimed, drawing his mace and readying himself for battle. The entrance to the hidden chamber. Arthur stepped back, his hand still tracing the runes. He could feel the power coursing through him, a feeling he hadn't felt in centuries. An ancient knowledge bubbled up within him, the forgotten memories of a time when he was more than just a prisoner in this labyrinth. "We must be careful," Arthur warned, his voice barely audible above the hum of energy filling the passageway. "The labyrinth's guardian may not take kindly to uninvited guests." The vortex began to grow larger, the air around it growing colder and denser. Thorn took a deep breath and stepped forward, his mace raised protectively as Vex followed close behind. Arthur trailed last, still feeling the ancient power coursing through him. As they entered the hidden chamber, their lanterns casting flickering light upon towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls, they were met with a sight that made them pause in shock. A monstrous creature stood before them, its multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light. Its limbs twisted and contorted in ways that defied logic, leaving the trio frozen in fear. "We must fight," Thorn roared, his mace swinging down towards the creature's massive form. The beast roared back, its voice echoing through the cavernous chamber as it lunged at them. Arthur could feel the power coursing through him once more, an ancient knowledge that had been long suppressed suddenly bubbling to the surface. He reached for a vial of swirling green liquid, downing its contents in one swift motion. As he did, his body began to transform, muscles bulging and shifting as his bones rearranged themselves. "What's happening to him?" Vex cried out, her eyes wide with fear. Arthur let out a primal roar as his final transformation was complete, standing before them as an immense beast with the power of a god. The battle against the green-eyed monster raged on, the air filled with the echoes of their clashing weapons and shouts of determination. The fight was long and grueling, each blow landing with the force of a thunderclap. Arthur's newfound strength proved to be more than a match for the twisted beast, but its multiple eyes allowed it to dodge and weave around his attacks with surprising agility. Thorn fought valiantly by his side, blocking and parrying as best he could while Vex provided support from afar, unleashing powerful spells that seemed to have little effect on the monstrous creature. The air in the chamber grew thick with the stench of burning ozone and sweat, the weight of their efforts pressing down upon them. And then, finally, Arthur landed the final blow. His mace connected with a sickening crack, sending the green-eyed monster tumbling to the ground in a heap of broken limbs and twitching muscles. The air in the chamber stilled as the beast's life faded away, leaving them all breathless and exhausted. "We did it," Thorn panted, looking around at his companions with pride. "We defeated the Guardian." Arthur stood before them, his body slowly reverting back to its human form. He felt a sense of relief wash over him as he looked upon the lifeless remains of the monstrous creature. It was a reminder of what they had faced and what they had overcome. "The labyrinth's secrets are ours to claim," Arthur said, his voice strong and steady. "We will find a way out." With renewed determination, they continued onward, their journey taking them deeper into the heart of the labyrinth, as they sought answers to the mysteries that had confounded them for centuries. The road ahead was long and fraught with danger, but they were no longer alone in their quest for freedom. As they ventured further into the labyrinth, they discovered ancient tomes filled with knowledge that could help them unlock the secrets of their prison. They found allies who shared their desire to escape, their ranks growing stronger as they delved deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. And through it all, they faced countless challenges and monstrous creatures, each one pushing them to their breaking point and beyond. But they persevered, driven by a shared sense of determination and an unyielding will to survive. They were no longer just prisoners, they were warriors, fighting for their freedom and the freedom of those still trapped within the labyrinth's walls. And as they continued onward, they grew stronger, their powers growing in tandem with their resolve. For the labyrinth was more than a prison. It was a test, a crucible designed to forge the ultimate evolved being. And Arthur, Thorn, and Vex were determined to prove themselves worthy of escape. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that victory was within their grasp if they could only endure. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, they found themselves facing a final, climactic confrontation with its mastermind. The battle was fierce and brutal, testing their mettle in ways they never thought possible. But in the end, they emerged victorious, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. With the labyrinth's guardian defeated, they finally stood on the precipice of freedom. The way out lay before them, a beacon of hope shining in the darkness. They had faced insurmountable odds and come out the other side stronger for it. Their journey had been long and arduous, but they had persevered. And as they stepped out into the world beyond the labyrinth, they knew that their story was far from over. For they were no longer just prisoners, they were survivors, warriors who had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. They would use their newfound knowledge and powers to protect those still trapped within the labyrinth's walls, ensuring that no one else would suffer the same fate they had endured for centuries. The dimly lit passageway stretched before them, its walls adorned with strange runes that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The air was thick and heavy, as if charged with some ancient power. Arthur, in his godlike form, towered over both Thorn and Vex, his eyes glowing with a fierce determination. "We're getting closer," he said, his voice echoing through the labyrinthine passageway. "I can feel it." Thorn nodded grimly, gripping his mace tightly. We will see this to the end. No matter what we face, we will not falter." Vex's eyes flickered with curiosity and determination. "What do you think awaits us in the next chamber?" Arthur hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm not certain, but I believe it may be our greatest challenge yet." Their footsteps echoed through the passageway as they made their way deeper into the labyrinth. The air grew colder, and a strange feeling of dread crept over them. Suddenly, a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows ahead, its eyes flickering with an eerie green light. It was unlike any they had faced before, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes that seemed to pulsate with unnatural energy. Arthur transformed once more, his body elongating into a serpentine form as he prepared to face the creature head-on. Thorn stood ready at his side, his mace poised for battle, while Vex held a small vial filled with a swirling green liquid. As they charged toward the monster, it raised its limbs and unleashed a wave of energy that sent them sprawling to the ground. The battle raged on, each blow landing with a thunderous crash as they fought for their lives. Arthur's serpentine form twisted and writhed, striking back with deadly precision. Thorn and Vex fought alongside him, their bodies battered and bruised but refusing to give up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Arthur landed the final blow, the monster collapsing lifeless at his feet. They stood panting for breath, their hearts pounding in their chests as they surveyed the carnage around them. "We did it," Thorn said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "We defeated that thing." Vex nodded, a determined look on her face. "We must press on. There's no telling what awaits us in the next chamber." Arthur turned to face them, his eyes glowing with renewed determination. "I won't rest until we've freed every soul trapped within this place." Echoes of the infinite cage, the trio had been traveling for hours through the dimly lit passageways, lanterns casting eerie shadows on the ancient stone walls adorned with strange runes. The air was thick with tension as they prepared themselves for another encounter with the monstrous creatures that roamed this place. "We should rest soon," Thorn said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The labyrinth will not wait for us to collapse." Arthur nodded, glancing at the small vial filled with a swirling green liquid clutched tightly in his hand. It was the only remaining sample of the potion that had allowed him to transform into the serpentine form. He knew it would not last forever, but he refused to let it go until they reached their destination. As they rounded a corner, a faint glow emanated from a hidden chamber up ahead. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the entrance. "I sense something powerful," Vex murmured, her eyes scanning the dimly lit passageway. "We must be cautious." With stealthy movements, they entered the chamber and found themselves in a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. In the center of the room stood a massive creature unlike any they had encountered before. Its body was twisted and grotesque, multiple eyes flickering with an eerie green light. "It's time," Arthur said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "We must defeat this beast if we are to continue." As they charged forward, the creature let out a blood-curdling roar and lunged at them with its twisted limbs. Thorn swung his mace, striking the creature with a resounding crack. Arthur released the potion within the vial, feeling the familiar rush of power coursing through him as he transformed into the serpentine form. The battle raged on, the creature's many eyes glowing brightly as it struck out with its limbs. Vex fought alongside them, her sword flashing in the flickering light cast by their lanterns. With every strike, The creature seemed to grow stronger, its twisted form twisting and contorting as if trying to adapt to their attacks. Arthur felt the potion's effects begin to wear off, his human form struggling to maintain the serpentine shape. He knew he couldn't hold out much longer. In a desperate attempt to end the battle once and for all, he charged at the creature with renewed vigor, unleashing a flurry of attacks that sent it sprawling to the ground. With a final blow from Thorn, the creature writhed in agony before finally succumbing to their combined might. Exhausted and battered, they leaned against the cold stone walls, panting heavily as they surveyed their victory. "We did it," Arthur said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we cannot rest here for long." Vex nodded, her eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of danger. "I sense something." Another creature nearby. The dimly lit passageways stretched before them, a gauntlet of twists and turns that seemed endless. The air was thick with tension as Arthur, Thorn, and Vex trudged through the labyrinth, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they would likely encounter another monstrous creature soon. As they ventured deeper, strange symbols etched into stone walls and towering columns loomed overhead, casting eerie shadows across their path. The flickering light from their lanterns barely illuminated the darkness around them, making each step a gamble of footfall or sudden confrontation. Vex's eyes scanned the passageway, her keen senses attuned to any disturbance in the air. "I sense something. It feels different," she murmured, a hint of fear creeping into her voice. Thorn grunted, tightening his grip on his mace, while Arthur clutched a small vial filled with swirling green liquid, the remnants of the potion he had used to transform earlier. With each step, they could feel the ground trembling beneath their feet, the labyrinth groaning in response to their presence. Suddenly, there was a loud crack as stone shattered, and a monstrous creature emerged from the shadows. It was unlike any they had faced before, a twisted mass of limbs and eyes that flickered with an eerie green light. "Prepare yourselves," Thorn roared, brandishing his mace, while Vex reached for her weapon, a tome bound in leather and gold. Arthur hesitated, knowing the potion's effects were waning, but he steeled himself ready to face this new threat. The battle was fierce. The green-eyed monster attacked with ferocity, its multiple limbs striking out at them from every direction. Vex and Thorn held their ground, dodging and parrying blows while Arthur struggled to maintain his serpentine form, the transformation growing weaker by the minute. As the fight raged on, Arthur felt the potion's effects wearing off. He knew he could not hold this form much longer. With a final burst of strength, he lunged at the creature, striking it with all his might. The monster recoiled, stunned, and Arthur seized the opportunity to land the final blow. Exhausted and battered, they looked around for any signs of another monster but found none. Thorn breathed a sigh of relief as they continued onward, their journey through the labyrinth still fraught with danger, but their resolve unbroken. As they ventured deeper into the bowels of the labyrinth, they discovered hidden chambers filled with ancient tomes and vials of swirling green liquid. Arthur's eyes widened as he realized these artifacts could hold the key to unlocking more of his latent powers or providing them with knowledge that could help them escape. Echoes of the infinite cage, the dim light flickered across their faces as Arthur, Thorn, and Vex trudged through another labyrinthine passageway, their hearts pounding from the adrenaline of their latest battle. The air was thick with tension, as if it could snap at any moment. Suddenly, a strange noise echoed through the darkness, a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before. It was a low growl, followed by a series of clicks and snaps that seemed almost mechanical in nature. The group tensed, their weapons at the ready as they crept forward cautiously. The passageway opened up into a vast cavern filled with towering columns and strange symbols etched into the stone walls. In the center of the chamber stood a monstrous creature, unlike any they had faced before, a twisted mass of limbs, eyes that flickered with an eerie green light, and skin that seemed almost liquid in its fluidity. Arthur felt his heart race as he locked eyes with the creature. He knew that this would be their most dangerous battle yet. The potion's effects were starting to wear off, and he struggled to maintain control over his serpentine form. But he couldn't let fear control him. Thorn and Vex stood ready at his side, their faces grim as they prepared for the fight of their lives. Together they charged at the creature, weapons raised high. The battle was brutal and chaotic, with the green-eyed monster lashing out in every direction. Arthur's serpentine form darted through the air, dodging its attacks while striking back with swift precision. Thorn's mace cracked against the creature's unyielding hide, sending shockwaves throughout the cavern. Vex wove between the towering columns, firing arrows that pierced the creature's flesh but seemed to do little more than anger it further. As the minutes dragged on, Arthur felt his powers beginning to fade, and he knew that they couldn't afford to wait much longer. With a roar, he charged at the creature once more, his body contorting and shifting as he transformed into a massive winged beast, its scales shimmering with an iridescent sheen. The green-eyed monster snarled, sensing Arthur's new form, and lunged at him with renewed ferocity. The two collided in a clash of scales and teeth, sending sparks flying as they grappled for dominance. Thorn and Vex fought alongside him, their determination unwavering even as the creature continued to batter them relentlessly. Arthur felt himself starting to tire, his wings heavy with fatigue, as he struggled to hold his own against the monstrous beast. But he refused to give in, knowing that they were so close to victory. With a final surge of strength, he struck out at the creature one last time, landing a blow that sent it crashing to the ground. Exhausted but victorious, Arthur collapsed onto the cold stone floor, panting and shaking. Thorn and Vex rushed to his side, their faces filled with relief and concern. They had done it, they had survived another battle in the labyrinth. The dimly lit passageway led Arthur, Thorn, and Vex deeper into the labyrinth's bowels. The air was thick with tension as the trio prepared themselves for whatever lay ahead. "We must remain vigilant," Thorn warned, his voice gruff but steady. "The labyrinth has a way of testing us at every turn." Arthur nodded, clutching the small vial filled with swirling green liquid tightly in his hand. The potion had saved him before, allowing him to transform into a powerful beast when danger threatened. But the transformation was taxing on his body, leaving him weakened for days afterward. As they ventured deeper, the dimly lit passageways seemed to stretch on endlessly. Vex, ever the enigmatic woman, walked beside them, her eyes glinting with an otherworldly light. "The labyrinth has a purpose," she mused, "and I will see us through to its heart." Suddenly, their path was cut off by a monstrous creature, unlike any they had faced before. Its twisted limbs and multiple eyes flickered with an eerie green light, casting sinister shadows on the stone walls. A low growl echoed through the cavern. Thorn charged forward, mace raised, but the creature was faster than expected. It lashed out with a tentacle, catching Thorn off guard and sending him sprawling to the ground. Arthur, still weak from his last transformation, knew he had to act quickly. With a surge of willpower, he drank the potion. His body convulsed as he transformed into a massive beast, its wings flapping wildly. He roared, charging at the creature. The battle was fierce and brutal. The monster's eyes glowed with malevolent intent as it slashed and lunged, but Arthur held his ground. Vex fought alongside him, her blade flashing like lightning in the dim light. After what felt like hours, Arthur landed the final blow, the creature collapsing to the stone floor. They stood panting, covered in sweat and grime. Thorn groaned as he pushed himself up, his armor dented and tarnished from the battle. "We did it," Vex said, her voice filled with relief. "But we must rest before we press on."